Good morning. I will convene this regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. Welcome to folks here in Harris Hall and to anyone joining us watching online. We'll do a first quick review of this morning's items to see if there are any adjustments to the agenda this morning. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pull item from the consent calendar, the Public Works item under Order 24-06-04-04 in the matter of the Herrera Environmental Consultants, Inc. expense of $250,000 for further explanation of the scope, please.
Thank you. And you did provide a little pre-notice to myself and the administrator, and I've talked with our Director of Public Works, and he's prepared to address that item later in the agenda when he is before us on another matter. So we will move that item off of the consent calendar and under Public Works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any emergency business this morning?
No.
Seeing none, we will then move directly into public comment. We do have a few folks lined up here in Harris Hall, so we'll begin with those folks. Then we will move to anyone that may be with us online wishing to address the board this morning, and then I'll check back in the hall to see if there's anyone who came in after the sign-in sheet got turned in who still wishes to speak. Speakers will be taken in the order in which they signed up. They are limited to 3 minutes per person. And when I call your name, I'll ask you to please come to the podium here. There'll be a 3-minute timer on the wall for you to keep an eye on. Begin by stating your name for the record, and that's when the timer will begin. Folks are also welcome to submit written comment either in addition to or instead of delivering testimony this morning. And first up, we have John Profit, and he will be followed by Cale Zuschlag.
Good morning, I'm John Profit. I have very little to say this morning. I sent you all an email and showed you about the last of hearings. All I want to point out is the ORSC and the OSSC, which means nothing to you folks, but those are the two building codes. Neither one of those are a commercial code, even though the building department keeps claiming I need a commercial building permit to adhere to them. I don't. I want my permit back. I want to finish my house. You guys have to be the ones to stop them. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Cale Zuschlag, who will be followed by Jeff McGilvray.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chair, and staff of Lane County for listening to me today. I'm here on the community benefits agreement that you guys have done at the county, and you guys have kind of paved the way for other places within our community. Initially, that was done to maximize the benefits within the community for capital improvements projects. And it was designed not to increase the cost of those projects to the taxpayers, which being a Lane County taxpayer, I appreciate. You guys had done a pilot project and then initially and did a couple projects and then dropped down the trigger of that down to $500,000, which was purposeful because the community benefits is designed around prevailing wage, and those subcontracts for prevailing wage are $50,000. So we made sure, or you guys made sure, that you guys were able to maximize and have real apprenticeship on your projects, not bogus federal programs that tend to keep people in positions where they don't have room for moving out of, and also to provide employer-paid full family health insurance, which is also baked into prevailing wage. So you guys have done something that was really meaningful and has been followed by other organizations. Lane Community College did something very similar. Their trigger mechanism for that dollar amount is $250,000, so half of what you guys are at. And I know that there's been inflation on projects and that project costs have gone up, but because it's based on prevailing wage, that hasn't affected you guys and those costs. So I want to say thank you for doing that, and I urge you guys to keep it where it's at if you guys are thinking about any changes. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Jeff McGilvray, followed by Russ Benton. Just a reminder, if you would please begin by stating your name for the record. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I will be quick as usual. Jeff McGilvray. Just kind of want to echo what the last speaker said. It was kind of a groundbreaking thing y'all did here. It's been really good for the community, especially coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of construction workers that do not have full family medical, and having this guaranteed in there, the money's already in there for prevailing wage to pay that. And it's just something I think it's a really, really good thing. It's been good for the members, been good for everybody. And the apprenticeship, the last speaker spoke about that. And I mean, we all know a lot of people, including myself, are aging out of the trades. And we need that good pipeline of people coming through the apprenticeship. But if we don't have the jobs, we can't have the people coming in there. And we see some of these out-of-state companies that we've seen before. We saw it with a project with a city with a capstone several years ago. And they were using federal apprenticeships that were bogus, and they didn't transfer to the next job for people, so they'd lose it. And you can't build a workforce that way. So I think applaud you all for doing this, and I would like to see no change in it. I think it's working great. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Russ Benton, and he will be followed by Steve Denton.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you so much for listening to me today. I'm here in support of the community benefits bidding protocol that is currently in place. This does a couple of really interesting and amazing things, just a byproduct of what this community benefits bidding protocol was trying to accomplish. First of all, it gives Lane County a competitive advantage when trying to access federal dollars, as cited in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. A community benefits plan is required to access the money that is being allocated by the federal government, and it puts you guys in a great competitive advantage for accessing those billions of dollars that are actually hitting the agency's budgets right now as we speak. I've been working on getting federal funding for the Department of Education here in Oregon for a couple of years, and I would encourage all of you to check with the Department of Education, go to their website. You will see the Smart Facilities grant writing services that are listed on there. But it relates directly to what you guys are doing here in Lane County, which is very progressive and very forward-thinking. I want to commend you on that. Also, the Community Benefits Bidding Protocol also creates a perpetual cycle of economic development for the communities here in Lane County. It supports apprenticeship and career opportunities, as the gentleman before me had just said, but it also creates disposable income that is spent and recirculated inside the counties or inside the communities here in Lane County. Those are the folks that are buying homes and buying cars and going to the local restaurants and movie theaters. You're talking about tax revenue that is generated by the disposable income that helps support infrastructure upgrades along with education improvements. So here in favor of it, I think it's a great policy. I'm hoping that the members of the board will keep this intact. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your public comment. Next, I'll call Steve Denton, and he will be followed by John Snyder. Good morning. If you would please state your name for the record, and your time will begin.
My name's Steve Denton, and I wanted to start by saying I'm in support of leaving the community benefits agreement the same as it always has been. I'll kind of just piggyback on what everybody else has been saying, but one thing I'll add is that a lot of these construction workers that worked on these projects since you guys have started this, it was the first time they've ever received full family health care. And a lot of those companies have actually continued to do that after the fact because they've seen the impact that it's had on their own people. So, I'd like to say that none of the other contractors are ever wrong or bad or anything like that, but, some of these exploitive contractors do take this healthcare thing and they'll cash it out when it's not attached by the bidding process, and they'll basically take advantage of their workers and underbid, competitive bidders and such. So I'm not being very outspoken right now, but thank you. I just wanted to repeat again, I'm in support of leaving it the same.
Thank you. You did great. Welcome up John Snyder, please, followed by Chris McGee.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is John Snyder. I'm a local carpenter out of 541 for the last 27 years. And just kind of reverberating kind of what everybody's been talking about is the benefits of the CBAs. They're essential tools that ensure workers on public projects receive family wages, full family benefits, and access to apprenticeship programs. These agreements provide a foundation for a healthier, more prosperous community by guaranteeing fair treatment and opportunity to our local workforce. Firstly, family wages are crucial. They provide workers with the financial stability necessary to support their families, afford housing, and participate in the local economy. When workers earn a fair wage, they are more likely to invest in the community, spend at local businesses, and contribute to the economic growth of Lane County. Family wages uplift entire families, creating a ripple effect of prosperity and stability. Secondly, providing full family medical benefits is an absolute necessity, not just a benefit. In today's world, access to quality health care is essential for well-being of workers and their families. CBAs ensure that workers do not have to choose between their health and their livelihood. By offering comprehensive medical benefits, we're fostering a healthier workforce and, by extension, a healthier community. This reduces the strain on public health resources and ensures that families can thrive without the burden of medical debt. Thirdly, access to apprenticeship programs is a game changer for our community. These programs offer invaluable educational training opportunities, preparing the next generation of skilled workers. Apprenticeship programs not only provide a pathway to stable, well-paying jobs, but also help bridge the skills gap in our local economy. By investing in these programs, we're investing in the future of Lane County, ensuring that we have a workforce ready to meet the demands of tomorrow's industries. In conclusion, I urge Lane County Commissioners to uphold strong standards for wages and benefits of Lane County's CBA. By doing so, we protect our workers, promote economic growth, and invest in the long-term health and prosperity of our community. CBAs are not just contracts, they are commitments to a better, fair future for all residents of Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Chris McGee, who will be followed by Eric Morgan.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for what you do. My name is Chris McGee. I'm a special representative for the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. Should developers and contractors make profit? Yes, they should. It's a partnership. The developers create projects for the general contractors, and the general contractors create work for the workers. What I personally find important on all of this is the worker. I would hope you would feel the same. What is a community benefits agreement? Primarily, it's called area standards in the respective area. In a nutshell, it's a fair living wage, with benefits for these workers and their families. These should be guided by the employers for these workers to be treated with dignity and respect. And you get that by paying a fair living wage. I don't see anything mentioned in the CBA, CBB, like local hire in the community. This agreement should have something that benefits the community in a way like that. Prioritizing local hire. When you pay a fair living wage to a local worker, the workers and their families can now go out and spend money in the community, or even afford to live in an apartment they just helped build. That, my friends, are some examples of community wealth. Let's add that into the discussion, not just generational wealth. My time as a former carpenter, foreman, running and bidding projects, when I did a project cost estimate, it's a list of materials that you need to build a project. These materials are the same across the board. The only thing that would affect a project bid dramatically is when a contractor does not pay a livable wage against a contractor who does pay a livable wage. And I'm talking about a low cost, not a livable wage, sometimes as low as $10 an hour. So let's ensure we create a level playing field when bidding on a project. And let's think about the community as a whole. Thank you for your time for listening.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up is Eric Morgan, and that is the last person I have signed up in Harris Hall at this time.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, and staff. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. My name is Eric Morgan. I'm a special representative for the Western States Carpenters Union, and I reside in District 3. Today, I will be addressing item B in today's work session. The construction industry in Oregon is dealing with an epidemic of wage theft, cash payments, and misclassification. This does not only happen on private jobs, but on prevailing wage, publicly funded, and one of the county's current CBA projects, the South Lane Clinic. where a GC falsified documents and is having an unlisted subcontractor performing the framing and drywall that has a track record of misclassifying workers, paying under the table, and has several ongoing wage theft cases. And we have the proof. A study published by UC Berkeley titled "The Public Cost of Low Wages" highlights that 43% of the construction workers in Oregon rely on some form of a safety net program, costing the state a staggering $710 million per year. Furthermore, 22% of construction workers in Oregon lack health insurance. That is a rate of 2.5 times higher than all of the workers in the state. The low wages and exploitive practices in the construction industry create a profound hardship for workers and their families and impose significant costs on the public. Employers who misclassify workers or pay them under the table are effectively defunding and defrauding government programs such as workers' compensation, Social Security, and Medicare. Misclassification alone is estimated to cost the state and federal coffers at least $3,000 annually for each misclassified worker in Oregon. The construction industry has the second highest number of wage theft claims related to its workforce, resulting in an estimated $2.6 billion in lost state and federal revenue annually. These low-road employment practices lead to above-average utilization of safety net programs by construction working families in Oregon. It is critical to note that these numbers do not account for undocumented workers, who are often treated as a commodity in the construction industry within Lane County. These workers live in constant fear and are frequently threatened if they seek help. Again, we have the proof. In the absence of robust legislation to present these practices, construction workers in Lane County and across Oregon will continue to face exploitation and wage theft, while law-abiding contractors will find it increasingly difficult to compete. This situation allows owners and developers to build generational wealth while passing the costs of low wages on to taxpayers. Commissioners, we urge you that you review and improve upon the current Community Benefits Agreement and the Community Benefits Bidding Program by enhancing transparency and prioritizing the local workforce, not just local contractors. By doing so, we can keep our tax dollars local and genuinely benefit the community by creating community wealth. Additionally, there is a crucial need to add enforceable measures to these agreements to ensure that unscrupulous contractors cannot continue to falsify documents and exploit the workforce of Lane County without repercussions.
Thank you.
Let us work together to ensure the community truly benefits and protect the most vulnerable among us. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I'll turn it over to Tanya to see if there's anyone signed up online to present comment.
Thank you. If you would like to give public comment at the Board of County Commissioners meeting for June 4th, please raise your virtual hand. Chair, I do not see any virtual hands raised, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll see if anyone has arrived in Harris Hall and didn't have a chance to sign up but wishes to address the board this morning. Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion. Thank you all for coming. Next on our agenda is an opportunity for commissioners to give response to public comment and/or bring up any other issues or share comments that they wish to this morning. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues, to the board. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank all the speakers that spoke here this morning. I know it's an odd time of day and you normally would be working or out on a project. So I appreciate your time and coming forward. I know you all mostly talked about the community benefits bidding protocol that we'll be discussing here in just a moment, so I'll reserve most of my comments for that until that time. But I do want to address Mr. Morgan's statement, specifically regarding transparency and issues potentially with the South Lane project. And I want to make sure in the room that you are introduced to Mr. Ward over here, Capital Construction, that you can speak to, and Mr. Lauren Blythe in the back of the room. He's got his hand up there, so that you can connect and ensure that if there are any transparency issues regarding that current project, that you are in touch and can provide any information to them to follow up. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. First of all, thanks everybody for coming out. As a fellow union member, well, not fellow anymore, I'm up here, but it does make me proud to see this many people show up for something they're passionate about. I would like to see Kale work on your vest so they're just a little too nice to be out here. I know that'll get you teased on the job site, but so no, really, thanks everybody for coming out. Something that I want to discuss later when we get into this is the apprenticeship program. It is a big deal. I mean, it's very evident we're lacking skilled labor. And I've talked to some people in the private sector that say they would love to start their own apprenticeship program, but it's very complicated to do. And so we'll talk about some of those issues and concerns later on, but I do want to say thanks everybody for coming out.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Trieger. Thanks for being here this morning. Great show of folks in the room. Sometimes we come in on Tuesday morning and we're the only ones here. I like it when we have people giving us good testimony, providing accurate information, and giving us things to think about, which we have this morning. You know, Eric and Chris and John, thank you for your commentary on the specific work of the carpenters and building trades. I'm going to speak more specifically to Russ Benton. You talked about support of community benefits bidding protocol. It supports the people who are buying cars in the community, buying houses in the community, going to movies and restaurants in the community. I also had paying for childcare. Has anybody in this room paid for childcare lately? You know, it's impossible to do even with a good job. If you're a single income household, for instance, it's just about impossible to do it. So thanks for being here this morning. Thanks for elevating our attention. Take care.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Great show up of orange vests, guys. I haven't seen that since I've been here. That's really impressive. I like that. Thank you for your passion. Thanks for the information. A lot of the stuff that you've told me that I learned differently. I think a couple things that kind of stuck into my mind is that there are some exploitive contractors out there. Everybody knows that. There's exploitive people in every sector of our workforce, and you're right, it does affect the community, and we need to weed those people out. I also want to go back on Chris's comment. You said we need to create a level playing field, and I agree with that. We do. I think family wage jobs obviously is the field that levels all instances of economic prosperity in the county, but also the level playing field also, in my opinion, also gives opportunity for small businesses to thrive too. So that's part of my my wish to have this discussion. And I do also, Eric, you mentioned something about undocumented workers, and I think that's becoming an increasingly difficult problem to face and to manage and to police, and I agree that there needs to be something done about that as well, because in my own neighborhood I've experienced that as well. So thank you for all of the scope of what you've given to the board to think about today. It's good stuff and I appreciate it. Thank you much.
Thank you. Well, I have a couple of items I want to talk about this morning, but I will start by following on to my colleagues. First, in appreciation to all of you for taking the time to come out here. I know for some people it's not always comfortable being inside and talking into a microphone, so thank you for doing that. It shows how much this matters to you. I also am greatly concerned about the issues that were raised by Mr. Morgan about generally about subcontractors working with folks under the table and basically skimming off the top of taxpayer dollars and exploiting those workers. But I'm doubly concerned that it's happening on a county project. And so I know Commissioner Buck has offered the proper staff contacts, so I'm going to give that a little bit of time. But also this afternoon during Commissioner assignments, I may opt to make an assignment, and hope my colleagues will join me in nodding heads to move that assignment forward, that if after we give enough time for some of these folks to connect with the appropriate staff and see if they can't sort it out that way, that we get a report back on that and hear how that's going and what can be done to make sure, because as Vice Chair said, not only is it a problem that's everywhere, but it's what are we going to do about it? And so I would like to make sure that we put some teeth into all of us up here saying we appreciate you elevating, but that we actually make sure that something's done about it, and that we set an example for our own future projects and for other projects in the community. So thank you for that, everyone. On an entirely other note, it is our first meeting back in a couple of weeks, and the last time, other than our budget hearing, we were in this room, some of us, for a really spectacular event on Friday, May 17th, which was celebrating the 10th anniversary of marriage equality in Oregon. And Judge McShane, who was the justice who made that ruling, graced us with his presence. It was incredible to have him here and speak on a panel with local attorney Jennifer Middleton, who was at the ACLU at the time, and a key player in bringing that policy forward to the state and ensure everyone has the opportunity to legally marry. And it was great now to be back for the first time on this first board meeting in the month of June, which is Pride Month. And we often talk about having a happy Pride, but I just also want to wish everyone a fair and equitable and righteous and safe and respected Pride. Those are all things that are gravely at risk right now. And so while we're celebrating, we also need to make sure that we are protecting everyone here in Lane County. So thank you, colleagues, for your time on all of those items, and again to folks who showed up here to speak today. We really do appreciate you very much. Moving on our agenda, we have a consent calendar before us. We've had one item pulled, so I will look for a motion to approve the consent calendar minus that one noted item.
Thank you, Chair. I move to adopt and approve the consent calendar for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 with the minus item.
I've got a clarification. Is it the entirety of C1 or a portion of C1?
It is just the one, so that was actually, thank you, Commissioner Buck, procedurally, since that one contract is part of an order of a group of things, we can still pass the item minus that one, but then when we get to that item later, will we need an order number to move that item forward? I'm looking to the administrator procedurally. If we're pulling something that isn't a standalone but part of a package of contracts all in one order, how we can handle that later.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, so Tanya, if you're listening, maybe you can do some fast research for us. But we can certainly move to pass the consent calendar to approve 6 of the 7 contracts listed, right? Commissioner Buck?
I'm just thinking it would just be easier just to pull the whole item
and
do the whole item.
I agree with that, yeah.
Great, then to the maker of the motion, does that work for you to just move the order?
Yes.
Okay, well then I will, we can have that motion die for lack of a second and ask for a new motion to approve the consent calendar minus item C1 in its entirety.
I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 minus the Public Works item in its entirety.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Senega to approve the consent calendar as published minus the entirety of item C1. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all. Next up is Public Works, and I know there are staff here for the Vegetation Management Program, which we will hear jointly as the Board of Health, but perhaps we could first just move that consent calendar item. Is Mr. Hurley still, Director Hurley in the room? Yes. We just move ahead and take that item. So it's a little unusual. We have the consent calendar as a Public Works item, but it is so that we can discuss that one item. So I'd like to invite Director Hurley to the table and to speak to the $250,000 contract for Herrera Environmental Consultants.
Thank you, Chair.
Tiffany Johnson is online also, just Dan, for your awareness, if you're needing county council.
All right, thank you, Tanya. So this item is to hire a consultant to do wetlands work for the property that we purchased for the IMERF, the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility that the board approved to move forward last December. We went through a competitive selection to select Hera. We considered this routine work. We do a lot of wetland mitigation work for the landfill. As we expanded the landfill, we move into wetlands, and we have a wetland mitigation property to the south of the Quamash Prairie, and so we've restored over 100 acres of wetlands and do a lot of this work. When we purchased this property at the board's authorization after the vote in December, we knew that we we're going to need to do quite a bit of wetlands work on this property. It's why we got such a great deal on this property. It was a 26-acre parcel that we purchased for $1.5 million. We knew that we would need to do pretty extensive wetlands work. We'll also need to do roads improvement work, some work around that. So we're probably looking at close to $1 million worth of wetlands work that we'll need to do. This piece of it is just for the consultant to help us through the permitting on it, and then we'll need to purchase wetland mitigation credits to be able to impact those wetlands to be able to move forward on the property.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah. Director Hurley, thank you. So with wetland mitigation, I know it's extremely time consuming. And is there any chance when we're done with this RFP, if we could get a presentation on that, on what they find and what kind of timeline we're on? And it seems like a pretty large number. I mean, are there that many wetland credits currently available?
There are, Commissioner. Yes, we've explored. We're able to get half of them about from the city of Eugene and the other half from a private wetland bank. We're planning to be back in front of the board on June 25th, and I'd be happy to talk about that at that time.
Bring that presentation back. Got it. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Hurley, you said that we're going to spend close to $1 million worth of work plus that. Is that not including the wetland credit buy, or is that inclusive of that?
That's inclusive of that, Vice Chair.
So on a $1.5 million piece of property, that was a good deal. We're going to spend another $1 million on it, and it's $2.5 million for 26 acres. Still a good deal in your opinion?
It is, Commissioner Lovell. So we were looking at various properties in the process of this. We were looking at a property just across the street that was smaller. We offered $3.5 million on that, and it also probably had some wetlands work to be done there, and they refused our offer. So we do feel like this was a good deal for this property.
Is the $250,000, is that about normal what we spend? It seems to me like, as I checked that seems to be about twice what we've spent in the past. Is there any reason for that?
Vice Chair, that's to make sure that we have enough budget for that work. It will be based on the amount of time that it takes to get through that permitting work, which is extensive. And also, we may use them for our other wetlands work for the Quamash Prairie. We use independent consultants for that as well.
So these guys could be doing two projects at the cost of one? Is that what you're saying? Did I hear that right?
I think we would have them on retainer to do our wetlands permitting work.
And what do you think is the timeline for this? I mean, I understand that, we need to be digging a shovel in that ground by the end of the year for the state funds to kick in. Is that also true?
That's true, Vice Chair. So we are currently exploring what constitutes breaking ground to be able to capture that federal tax credit. So the entire property is in wetlands, and so we're hoping that we can get started on the areas that aren't wetlands so that we can qualify for that, and we're exploring that right now. But we're also just trying to push this timeline to make sure that we can get the wetland impacts approved. Typically, that process takes about a year, so we're behind the ball on that.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news and ask the out of the context question a little bit, but I've gotten hundreds of emails of concern about this project and the expense of this wetland mitigation quote. And I'm just wondering if what's our reporting back to the public procedure going to be? Do we have something in place? Can the public expect a good deal of transparency going forward, or is this deadline going to force us to be a little more adherence to the deadline rather than transparent to the public? That was their concern to ask.
Vice Chair, so if we're concerned about cost overruns, our portion of the project is the site preparation, the purchase of the property and the site preparation, and then purchasing a portion of the building for $35 million. So if there are cost overruns on the construction, all that piece of it, that's on the bulk handling side. That's their piece of the risk. So we're just responsible for the site prep. I don't anticipate that cost for the wetlands would go over that high-end $1 million that I'm talking about for the wetlands credit and this wetlands work. We will be back in front of the board as discussed on June 25th to talk about the contract and the financing of that $35 million. And we anticipate coming back at regular intervals to give updates on the project.
Super, thank you.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, just one more quick question. Is that, if I'm not mistaken, there's concerns with some of the zoning on that property too. Is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner. We talked about this when we were going through this project, the remaining things that needed to be done, and we talked about the wetlands and this other piece about the zoning. So the board went through a rezoning of Goshen to allow for higher levels of development. In the process of doing that, it changed the zoning from rural industrial to light industrial, with the intent that it would be encourage developments that would create more jobs in the area. This project wasn't envisioned, and so waste processing wasn't one of the listed uses. So in order to move this project forward, we'll need to revert back to this rural industrial zoning. So we're moving through that right now. We have a consultant doing that work to prepare a package that will go to the hearings official for the beginning of that decision-making.
Okay. But thank you for the great description. I was asking specifically about the wetland mitigation and stuff. And is this consultant going to be part of that zone change, or is this just for the credits?
So the zone change and the wetlands pieces are two different things. So the wetlands pieces need to go through the Division of State Lands and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for permitting.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick comments before a couple of questions. Back in 1995, I got my first peak of wetlands when we dedicated the West Eugene wetlands. We stood where what is now is Chickamauga Access, that area out there, and it was just fields, and it was kind of overrun with a lot of different growth. Today, if you go out there, it's a pretty wonderful wetland area. And when you're talking about purchasing wetland credits, quite often it goes into larger projects such as that. With the purchase of credits from the city of Eugene, a lot of that goes into I believe, the recent expansion of the urban growth boundary after Envision Eugene, and then potentially some of it goes toward the urban reserve that we recently helped create. So all of this is a part of living in the upper Willamette Valley. I mean, there are a lot of wetlands all around us. We've got the Fern Ridge Lake. That used to be a complete wetland area. Now it's a big, one of the larger lakes in Oregon. So it's where we live. And whether or not it's a public works project or a private project, outside of urban growth boundaries, wetlands are present. It's almost impossible to find areas without wetlands, and it's just a part of the process. Can be spent, but we are getting better and better at it all the time. And the contractors who do the work are getting better and better at it, making it more efficient all the time. So thanks for the work being done on that. And I guess my question for you, maybe you've already answered it. The timeline, we're hoping to get it done within a year. Is that what I heard?
Sure, we're trying to move sooner than that, but we're working with a state and federal agency, so it'll really be on their timeline. We'll push as much as we can. But to your point about the wetlands, there are wetlands throughout the valley and around Goshen, and it will be one of the challenges to development there. This particular piece of wetlands they're fairly low quality wetlands, and it's isolated between Highway 99 and I-5. The wetland credits that we'll purchase will be for larger areas. Typically, it's a 2-to-1 ratio or more. And part of that will be with the West Eugene wetlands.
And in fact, the park blocks and courthouse facility that we're sitting on right now and Eugene Skinner's cabin probably couldn't have been built today without some form of wetland mitigation. That's just the way it is. So thank you, Dan, Director Hurley, for that. And I'm ready to make a motion whenever you're ready, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'll just note, since Vice Chair brought up transparency, and I agree that's important just for the public since we pulled this item, this is an on-call consultancy contract for a not to exceed $250,000. So this is not a hard sign on the dotted line, and it's going to cost us that much money. And it's also a 3-year retainer, according to the materials. So just that's important for people to know. And I spoke with Director Hurley about this item possibly coming before us, not on consent calendar. And so also just in the name of transparency, want to say, unless Vice Chair's received emails specific to this item, those have been about the project based on some lack of clarity and understanding of some impacts of the energy recovery portion of the project, not about this particular contract. Is that?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move Order 2406-04-04 in the matter of approving 7 public works contracts and amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the approved contracts and amendments for Friends of Beaufort Park and Mount Pisgah, non-financial, Camp Creek Electric LLC, expense in the amount of $75,000, Herrera Environmental Consultants Incorporated, expense in the amount of $250,000, Oregon Department of Transportation, non-financial, Bridgeway Contracting LLC, expense in the amount of $565,495, Lane Council of Government, expense in the amount of $115,000, and DKS Associates Incorporated, non-financial.
I'll second.
Been moved by Commissioner Farr and seconded by Commissioner Buck to pass Order 2406-04-04. Is there any discussion to the motion? Vice Chair.
Yes, Chair, thank you. County Administrator Steve, I'd like some guidance on this. The people I represent do not want me to support this $250,000 Herrera Environmental Consultant, but the rest of the matter is all right. How do I proceed on this?
I think the cleanest thing to do, you either, well, if you want to separate out that item, I think we need a separate board order to bring that to the board so that you could vote separately on that issue. And I don't know what the timing of that would look like.
As a point of order, we have a motion and a second on the table, and
A motion to amend would be appropriate.
thank you.
I'm not amending.
Yeah. So then we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? And I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay?
Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioners Lovall and Seneca in the minority. Moving along, we will now convene a joint meeting of the Board of Health and the Board of Lane County Commissioners to hear Public Works item, which is a discussion only, in the matter of the Lane County 2023 Integrated Vegetation Management Program Annual Report. And for that, I will welcome Melanie O'Hara, our Natural Resources Specialist from our Road Maintenance Division, to the table, and Aaron Schumacher. Good morning, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Trieger, Vice Chair Lovall, Oren Schumacher, Road Maintenance Manager with Lane County Public Works. I get the easy part today of introducing Melanie O'Hara to present on our annual IVM report to the Commission. Chair Trieger did note that there is no action required. We previously had action required, but no longer is. Just want to make the board aware of that. And then I will be here available with any questions at the end if you have any. Otherwise, I'll hand it off to Melanie.
How do we get it on this?
Oh, is Tanya running it? Tanya, do you have the slides?
No, Melanie, there's a laminated paper right next to you that will tell you how to do that. You just need to share it via Zoom.
Okay, sorry.
And for folks in the room, while Melanie's setting that up, who came with public comment and we're waiting for that item, it looks like we have about a half an hour's worth of business still before we get to that item.
Okay, good morning. Sorry about that. Again, my name is Melanie O'Hara. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist with the Lane County Roads Division. Part of my duties is handling coordination for the Integrated Vegetation Management Program here at Lane County Public Works. So I just want to give you a quick, brief overview of our program and its progress over the past year. First, we've been facing a few issues with program logistics and staff retention needed to really bring our program into full swing for the herbicide program. As a result, we had one single knotweed herbicide application. It was out on Clear Lake Road. we haven't had any herbicide applications made in 21 or 2022. It's just kind of been an ongoing staffing issue. And then towards the end, we'll talk about a few program logistics that we're facing. For a little program overview, in 2016, Lane County Road Maintenance Division was approved through adoption of, board order. The Roadside Integrated Vegetation Management Program operates a limited-use herbicide program in conjunction with our standard routine road maintenance efforts. We use an adaptive management approach to our vegetation control using various methods, including manual controls, which includes grubbing and hand pulling, mechanical controls, which includes mowers, weed eaters, brush trimming, biological controls, which includes the release of approved insects and pathogens that specifically target individual noxious weed species. We utilize cultural controls, which includes preferred seed mixes and native species used to outcompete noxious weeds moving into an area, and then chemical controls through our limited use program. The ordinance approved specific limited uses within the Lane County rights-of-way, and those include overgrown vegetation behind guardrail, vegetation control behind guardrails, noxious weed controls of state-listed priority species, and the treatment of stump sprouting tree species after their removal. Last month, 3 herbicide products were annually reviewed and approved by the Public Health Advisory Committee for use by our program. These meet specifications as outlined in Chapter 15.511 of the Lane Code. Our approved products are Vaseline, Milestone, and Ecomazepure 2SL. Each product is chosen with a specific target species in mind. Vaseline is used to combat woody and herbaceous species such as Armenian blackberries found behind overgrown guardrails. Milestone is a broadleaf herbicide used to combat the various knapweed species, and Ecomazepure 2SL is a broader target array, but we use it mainly to combat the various knotweed species. Our main target for treatment could be considered our biggest vegetation control issue, and that's overgrown guardrails. They present a hazard to both our work crews and the public using our rights-of-way. They become visibility hazards on curves and corners, and as vegetation encroaches into the roadway, pedestrians and bicyclists are forced further into the lanes of traffic, presenting additional safety issues on the roadway. Since guardrails are typically placed where road hazards already exist, steep embankments and dangerous curves, we can see how mechanical maintenance behind these same rails can become safety issues for our county employees. Another focus of the IVM program is noxious weed control. Here are 2 examples of some Lane County priority weed species that we've targeted for herbicide control efforts. Japanese knotweed is on the left and puncture vine is on the right. We're consistently looking to foster and maintain partnerships in assisting targeting these noxious weed species, and it assists us in determining priority locations for herbicide control efforts. In the past, we've worked with watershed councils to assist control efforts that combat species within the watershed by facilitating herbicide applications within the right-of-way. This includes working with the Pure Water Partners on the Holiday Farm Fire Burn area and with the Mackenzie River Trust adjacent to some of their restoration areas. Our program is also developing plans to focus control efforts on priority species on roadways adjacent or leading into county, city, and federal natural areas to assist in stemming the spread. Our last scenario for treatments are the numerous tree species that grow within our right-of-way. These are considered stump-sprouting tree species. These applications tend to be fairly limited, but are an additional tool available when needed. Our program took to heart recommendations from the Vegetation Task Force and has incorporated safeguards geared toward public health and safety into our program. We provide 7-day advance notice to our applications through our webpage and currently with roadside signage. We also post biodegradable signs stating the date and product used for an application at each treatment site post-application. Our No Spray Area program provides the public with a voice, allowing them to opt out of herbicide applications that may occur within the right-of-way directly adjacent to their parcel and renews every 3 years. The most recent renewal of the program was this year. Our applicators have mobile tablets with access to program data that allows them to incorporate necessary components in real time. On this slide, the green lines represent guardrails that receive no treatments because they are adjacent to the red parcels, which indicate enrollment in the No Spray Area program. And the yellow lines represent guardrails that received a treatment application. Yellow indicates it was a medium category, which typically refers to vegetation encroaching within 4 to 5 feet behind the rail. If it were red line, that would indicate a heavy vegetation coverage, which is encroached to the rail or out into the travel lane of traffic. In addition, our IVM webpage allows the public to gain access to program data. We keep a current year's dashboard and an interactive map providing up-to-date treatment locations, the no spray area enrollments, and guardrail and noxious weed locations. It includes summaries, monthly spray report summaries, and access to the annual reports and the approved products list. The webpage is still a work in progress, but we hope to create a resource for the public and eventually provide valuable information on things like best management practices and fact sheets for noxious weed species. As always, mechanical and manual vegetation control is the county's primary focus for our roadsides. We have no plans for any product changes or requests for additional products this year. And the past 3 years will definitely show as a departure from our anticipated path forward for the program in regard to treatment numbers, but we still do anticipate that once the program is able to get going, the early years of the program will show a higher occurrence for instances with a need for herbicide applications before we begin to see a decrease in application rates. We do continue to focus on ways that we can improve all components of our program. One of those ways has recently been trying to adaptively manage the program for efficiency and cost savings. We've had conversation with our stakeholders to develop alternative methods to roadside signage in order to fulfill the 7-day advance notice requirement. We noted in our review last year there are significant costs and inefficiencies associated with the placement and removal of advance notice road signs, impacting the flexibility necessary for best management practices for successful control efforts. Should changes be approved, we would continue posting all application notices on the webpage, as well as post applications, on-site signage, and the use of blue dye. These changes will require updates to Lane Code Chapter 15. In closing, we're always looking for opportunities to partnerships and to continue education in weed management. And we continue to provide accessible, accurate information in the hopes of providing insight to the entirety of our vegetation management program. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn it over to the board for any questions. That's Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. It just has to do with the very last portion of what you were saying, which sounds like the action that's going to be coming forward to us. We know that having those signs up that say, hey, we're going to spray here in the next week or whenever it is, have been really challenging for you to administer, and they get tagged and disappear and all that good stuff. So, I mean, we have to just keep up to date in general with how we communicate with the public and at large, knowing that there are other ways that people communicate that might be more effective and maybe even lower cost for us. So the timeline that we're seeing you come back is going to be when, and it sounds like it's going to be in the form of an ordinance. Is that right?
Correct. Thanks, Commissioner Buck. So the challenge with the road signs that are out there, the large orange ones, is that it requires kind of more or less 3 visits to each location, which creates both confusion to the public, some of the timing constraints we have, plus really a much greater footprint in terms of what we're trying to avoid here, which is environmental impact. So our goal would be to keep the transparency. That's been one of our key focal points of this program and agreements with our stakeholders. So we feel like we're going to come back to the board with some proposals in cooperation, we hope, with our stakeholders. We've had those conversations. They seem rather supportive, as long as we don't take away the goal of here's what the public can see, here's what we're doing, and being transparent. We think we can do that through an initial mailing to our most interested parties, which would be our no spray area holders, and the public, doing some media outreach, and then also doing really the push on the internet to have these websites and phone lines available for all of our applications, both pending and proposed. So we think we can achieve the same thing with much less cost and impact, and probably less confusion in the end. So we would like to come back to the board. In terms of timelines, I expect we're going to be busy this summer, so we wouldn't start doing this until the fall. So in preparation for the next season, I think we're too late this season to make any of those changes. But you bring up a point that I do think we want to highlight, is that the IVM program for purpose was put into Lane Code. And that was really based on trust and transparency. So I think it's in a good place for those two reasons. It also creates concerns is that IVM by its nature is meant to be adaptable, and code is not. And so one of the things that we want to look at and eventually have conversations around is the code the right place, or is Lane Manual a better home for the entire IVM code language now? Because again, IVM by its design is to be adaptive, and these little changes create a lot of work and effort to make that maybe are just minor in nature. Lane Manual may be a better place for that. But again, the reason it's in code was history, and I don't want to neglect that as we move forward, but I do think it's worth having a conversation in the long run of where IVM program should be. So
I appreciate that. I know when it was first put in place, this room was filled, and we don't necessarily need or want that again. So trust is important. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Seneca, and then Commissioner Farr.
Excellent presentation. I appreciate it. I remember lots of it from last year. I didn't look at my notes, but I think I had the same comment or thoughts last year. And the added concerns with the signs is local farmers. I know when those signs go up, a lot of the Filbert farmers in the rural areas start to get stopped when they're out working. And they're like, no, it's not us, it's the county, but trying to explain that to people. So I just want to say I fully support this. I think it's a great idea, and I think it'll help our transparency also. And before I sign up or wrap up here, just want to give a shout out to the vegetation team in general. Or your team has been very responsive when I call with questions or concerns that constituents have reached out about, and just want to say thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And yeah, this is the time of year where you guys likely receive the highest volume of calls because vegetation in the spring is growing rapidly. So we are aware of that and doing our best out there with the crews we have.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I've documented that you can actually watch vegetation grow sometimes this time of the year. Don't turn your back, as it'll grow around your ankles. You know, first off, I'm going to compliment you on a great presentation, Ms. O'Hara. Good presentation, very comprehensive. And you highlighted something that really is important, that people understand what we're doing and how they can participate, whether it be to enter the No Spray program, or I believe we have a school bus spray program, etc. But I wanted to compliment you very specifically on the website, because that does clear a great deal of confusion. All people need to do is go to Lane County's IVM website, Integrated Vegetation Management, and really, I'm actually looking at it right now, and they can see no spray area program, noxious weeds, policies, ordinances, the whole thing is here. Easy to click, easy to understand, easy to read, and updated on a regular basis, I suspect, based upon what I'm reading. So, so really a great job of making the people aware of what they can do to avoid, you know, to opt out, should that be the desire, and making it easier all along for them to understand exactly how to do it. The other thing I will mention, Mr. Schumacher, is something that you said. I love it. IVM is meant to be adaptable, code is not. So Lane Manual is a more appropriate place for it to dwell, because it's more easily adaptable than the code is. The code is a little bit more, not cumbersome, but necessarily difficult to change. So bravo in moving forward on that. But I'm going to use that quote on so many different things. Blank is meant to be adaptable, code is not. So fill in the blank. You may hear that from me from time to time. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Echo all the comments. I mean, I can't think of anything more volatile than vegetation management and spraying other than parking. So I just want to, congratulate both of you and your team for just a really highly respectable, dignified way of handling it, a potentially volatile situation, and I think you're navigating it very well. So I just want to echo all the comments that were here and just say thanks again. Good job.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll just add my appreciation. And I think that point of, I don't think it was in the code. I don't think it was a mistake to put it in the code at the time that we were with the process. And that's also why we would hear it as the Board of Health. because of the issues and the community and where we were, and now we've evolved and learned and have a program in place that maybe that is the direction we're moving, away from needing to do a joint meeting of Board of Health, away from needing to have it in the code. And the only other thing I'll say is, still waiting for that day when we figure out a way to have holographic signs so we can turn them on and off. There's no waste involved. There's that will no graffiti. That would save a lot. So thank you. This was a discussion only item, so no action from the board. Any other comments from staff needed before we conclude this item?
I don't have any further comments. Just appreciate your time in hearing it today, and we will hopefully see you in the fall with some updates.
Great. Thank you very much. Look forward to it. All right. With that, I will adjourn the joint meeting of the Board of Health and the Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners for County Administration. And we have first up a brief item, Order 24060405, in awarding a contract to Wildish Construction. And I'll welcome David Ward, our Capital Planning and Facilities Maintenance Manager, to the table to present the item. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Traeger, Vice Chair Lovall, and Commissioners. Thank you. So the first agenda item, as Chair mentioned, is in the matter of awarding a contract to Wildish Construction in the amount of $1,064,000 to install a stormwater collection and treatment system and pave the Pearl Street parking lot, and to delegate the authority to County Administrator to execute this contract. So this is for comprehensive construction services to install a new stormwater collection system and a treatment facility at the Pearl Street parking lot just to the east of our public service building, in accordance with the City of Eugene stormwater requirements, and to also pave that parking lot with a semi-permanent asphalt surface for durability. This item is in accordance with the Oregon revised statutes governing public procurements, and this project was specifically advertised for competitive bidding, and Wildish Construction was the low bidder. So just a little bit of background. This particular parking lot location was acquired by Lane County in a land swap deal with the City of Eugene in exchange for previously county-owned land immediately to the west of the courthouse where the old Butterfly parking lot once stood. The Pearl Street location is allocated for future new Lane County Courthouse, but is currently being utilized as a temporary parking lot in the interim due to the demolition of the former Butterfly parking lot. The board approved a contract to install the lot's existing geotextile surface through Board Order 1903-1207. And the policies and procedures relevant to this proposal relate to the procurement requirements contained in Lane Manual Chapter 20, and the project was bid under the requirements of the Community Benefits Bidding Program. This project supports the Board of Commissioners' strategic goal of fiscal resource stewardship by providing a more durable and cost-effective solution to the temporary parking needs than the ongoing and future maintenance costs of the current lot surface. So the proposed cost to install the stormwater collection and treatment center and to pave this Pearl Street parking lot will be borne by the general fund through property management parking revenues. And employee parking revenues for that lot is estimated about $70,000 annually, which will help offset the cost for the work of this over time. In further clarification, we're currently budgeted for a split between this current fiscal year and next fiscal year, with about $330,000 from Fund 124 Property Management to Capital this year, and the remaining $900,000 from the same fund transfers in the next fiscal year. Health implications. So I think, as most folks know, this lot has had various hidden potholes, sort of exacerbated by the fabric being stretched over them, and it's caused obviously a trip hazard for county employees as well as other folks who come in and use the lot on the weekends. So, brief analysis. When faced with the need for temporary parking in preparation for the 2020 demolition of the Butterfly parking lot by the City of Eugene, the county initially covered this lot with a pervious fabric called the Roll Park in 2019, which was anticipated to provide a surface with sort of a known durability and use of life about three or so years. And that also eliminated the need to actually provide any storm water treatment at that time because it was pervious, so it allowed the water to go through to the substrate. It's been in use now for 5 years and is beyond its useful life. and needs to be resurfaced. The substrate also below that fabric has broken down and caused ongoing formation of potholes that we just keep chasing our tail with that. And and also it's jarring to vehicles when folks are driving through the lot. So the estimated cost to replace the existing surface with the same 3-year product is about $700,000, and the lifespan of a proposed hot mix asphalt surface is 25 years, give or take, and that will allow us time to negotiate the building of a new Lane County courthouse or other facility on that site while temporarily using it for parking, and we consider it that it's best used at this time given the uncertainty about what's to come. So there again, we were requesting awarding this contract, and a couple other additional thoughts. I want to emphasize the recent work and discussions with the City of Eugene for this project. We've tried to consider there's a balance between this anticipated temporary state of this parking lot and weighing that against sort of the longer-term vision that the city has about tying the riverfront property down Pearl Street and to the downtown core. And so how do we best provide durability for this lot while adding some value, I think, to the city and to our folks traveling through these areas? So that includes, again, the stormwater management systems there in the parking lot. We're adding some plants to those as well, similar to what's been done around this area. And also in a meeting we had a couple weeks ago with the city, talking about possibly adding just a handful of trees along Pearl Street on the parking lot side, again, to sort of visually and functionally tie these areas together. So again, you know, some intentional and I think fruitful conversations with the city. And then also, if the board approves this today, we're ready to begin early survey work on the west side of the lot this week and anticipate mobilizing equipment as early as the 10th. And the west side of the lot is anticipated to be done by the end of July with parking services restored on the west side, and then we would approach the east side in a similar manner and anticipate that being done by the first week of September. So.
Administrator has a question or comment.
Pardon?
Are you done, or are we still?
Yes. Yep.
I just had one brief comment. I wanted to add that we do, in addition to serving the needs of our employees and the public for parking at this location, we do collect approximately $70,000 per year in the general fund. So that revenue goes into the general fund from revenue from this site.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments for Mr. Ward from the board? Commissioner Seneca.
Just real quick, I'll say, yeah, I completely support this, and, you know, you guys did a great job and went into good detail yesterday in the Facilities Planning Committee, so appreciate all the hard work. Let's get started.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, and I'm going to talk about potential conflict of interest and why this is not a conflict of interest. It's been clarified by council that when awarding contracts to contractors or working with the collective bargaining units, for instance, provide support to political campaigns, it has nothing to do. It is separate completely from the work of the Board of County Commissioners, so it is not a conflict of interest. I've been advised.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, just a quick little chagrin there. Thanks, David, for all your work. And the parking lot thing, as you know, probably if we decide to build a courthouse, there were probably 10 years out to doing that. I would hope not, but we realistically probably are. And based on our income that Mr. Mokraiski said, we're going to have this thing paid off pretty much by then. So I think it's a zero-sum game, and I'm totally in support of this. Good job.
Then I will look for a motion.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to move that we approve and award the contract to Wildest Construction Company in the amount of $1,064,000 to install a stormwater collection and treatment system and pave the Pearl Street parking lot, and to delegate the authority to the county administrator to execute the contract as per order number 24-06-04-05.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there any discussion to the motion? Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of Order 24-06-04-05 in the matter of awarding a contract to Wildish Construction Company in the amount of $1,064,000 to install stormwater collection and treatment system and pave the Pearl Street parking lot, and delegate authority to county administrator to execute the contract. Thank you. Mr. Ward will stay at the table with us for our next item, which is a work session in the matter of reporting on future impacts of the community benefit bidding program per a board assignment made by Vice Chair Lovell on March 21st, 2023. And Lauren Blythe, our Director of Operations, is also with us this morning. Good morning, welcome.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Lauren Blythe, Director of Operations. Basically here just to kind of hand off to David Ward and also include that the work and administration of the Community Benefits Bidding Program is a collaboration between David Ward as the Capital and Facilities Manager as well as Sean Hubble, our Procurement Manager, but Sean is not in the office today. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge two things also, that Sean has been a real partner in developing this for this agenda item for today. And I also want to acknowledge to our folks here with the Council of Carpenters. Thank you for being here and showing support. So the purpose of this work session is to report back to the board on staff findings regarding the county's community benefit bidding program and the impact of inflation on the projects that this program has applied to. Background, in the 2018-2021 Lane County Strategic Plan, it identified the key initiative of a community benefits framework for capital projects with a goal to utilize a community benefits agreement, or a CBA, for the Lane County Courthouse project. Because the courthouse bond did not pass, the project was placed on hold. In August of 2020, staff began researching how to apply the CBA process to the list of Lane County capital construction projects. And it was determined at that time that to achieve the community benefits on capital building construction projects for the county, applicable procurement policy and statute allowed an alternate to a CBA for delivering similar local impacts on smaller capital projects by using a pre-qualification process prior to project bidding, which our staff has called the Community Benefits Bidding, or CBB program. Staff compiled a proposed pilot project for county capital building construction projects that were $1 million and above. Those will require prospective bidders to pre-qualify and certify that they met certain criteria specific to local impact requirements, such as living wages, full family health care coverage with no cost share by the employee, and a state-approved apprenticeship program. The board discussed the CBB program concept at the September 29th of 2020 Board of County Commissioners meeting, and the board approved program implementation on October 20th of 2020 under Board Order 2010-2006. Then the board expanded the CBB program on April 12th of 2022 under Board Order 2204-1204, which included lowering the threshold on capital construction projects from $1 million to $500,000, adding diversity goals, and establishing disqualification criteria for contractors that failed to comply with their obligations under the CBB program. At the board's request, staff reported back to the board last year on March 21st, 2023, the results of a cost feasibility study of the CBB program to gain an accurate understanding of continued viability and how it affects the best use of project dollars. The 4 elements that staff were asked to analyze include cost comparison of projects past and future, verification of apprenticeships and job training, verification of full insurance requirements, and then future impacts on the FY 23 to 24 budget year, including inflationary models of overall costs. At that same meeting, the board requested additional information at a forthcoming work session to review future impacts of the CBB program and the possibility of raising the minimum limit to a more realistic limit, or one that would entail a smaller project purview to reflect the current inflationary standards. And Lane Manual Chapter 20 and ORS 279 guide our staff on procurement and contracting for capital projects and permit the use of a CBB program with pre-qualification for bidding, based in part or the capacity for prospective bidders to meet the county identified local impact goals. And one of the goals that we are highlighting here is the strategic plan priority number 3, robust infrastructure. We want to maintain and invest in resilient infrastructure that creates the highest return for safety, community connectivity, enjoyment of life, and local economic success. Health implications, there again, promoting living wage jobs and family health benefits on capital projects have a positive impact on local health-related concerns. Support for apprenticeship programs helps to develop the local construction trades workforce. So some analysis. The CBB program is currently in its 4th year. Over the last 4 years, the county has averaged approximately 63 pre-qualified contractors, most of which resubmitted their qualifications to the program after their initial 2-year terms expired. To date, there have been 11 projects that qualified for the CBB program. The board elected to change the CBB program threshold from the original amount established in 2020 of $1 million down to $500,000 in April 2022. According to the Mortenson Cost Index, which is attached to the packet, inflationary pressure on construction costs in our area, which is driven primarily by Portland, but we also are included in that zone, that inflation has increased approximately 42% during the same time period, and it has since leveled off. So we have a few observations. One, as projects become larger or more involved, who bids on those projects tends to change. As an example, large contractors often will not bid on smaller projects because they specialize in more complex projects that may take multiple years to complete or are of considerable cost. So, for example, like the new stabilization center project that's forthcoming. That would be considered a large project. That compared to medium-sized contractors that tend to bid on less costly projects, anywhere from, say, $400,000 to $1.3 million, and those could be completed within a few months. And also comparatively, some smaller contractors might be interested in projects from $200,000 to $700,000. Those typically would be completed just within a couple of months and are much less complex. So in addition, the CBB program currently requires certain first-tier subcontractor trades to meet the same CBB requirements and to be considered an eligible subcontractor for CBB projects. So a first-tier subcontractor is defined in Oregon statute as a contractor that holds a subcontract worth 5% of the overall bid or $15,000, whichever is greater. So again, the first tier is defined as a subcontractor that has their contract about 5% of the overall bid or $15,000. So for projects estimated at $500,000, that equates to a subcontract worth $25,000. So it kind of gives you some context to what that means. While lowering the CBB threshold has the potential to encourage contractors to take steps to become qualified, having too low of a threshold can result in smaller contractors or subcontractors not being able to compete for projects that they are capable of performing, albeit not able to qualify for the CBB program based on a current lack of resources to meet the CBB requirements. So, based on all this information, and that's a lot of information, our recommendation at this time is we do not have any recommended changes to the policy, again, at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Anything to add, Mr. Blythe, before I turn it over to the board for questions? No. All right, then. Any questions or comments from the board for the panel? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, for a great presentation and all the data. Thanks for doing that. It's been a long time coming. March of last year, we started talking about this. We had some personnel changes, so thanks for delving into this. I got a few questions. I'm going to round about your point when you said lowering the CBB threshold has the potential to encourage contractors to take steps to become qualified, but having too low of a threshold can result in smaller contractors and subcontractors to not be able to do some of the work that the county and the municipal entities put out. So that's kind of where my head is at as asking these questions. And as we're looking ahead, and you had, I think there was some more data in about how many projects we've done and what the costs were in the board packet, and thanks for that. But due to the fall of the ARPA fund push that we had in that infilling of money, the outlook of much larger jobs, some of which that one of the speakers said that the federally funded jobs that we as a county can become more competitive on, would this adjustment, let's say if we went up back to $1 million, would that really affect that at all in your opinion?
We don't seem, based on the current data, we don't seem to have the information to make a direct correlation between those. And so that's why, yeah, there again, at this point, we don't really recommend any changes to what we currently have in place.
Just out of curiosity, what did the South Lane Center cost?
So South Lane Clinic.
South Lane Clinic.
The total budget, I think, is around 8 million.
8 million. So that obviously was a job for the CBA agreement.
Correct, and the contractor's contract is just over 4 million for that project.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering with the amount of jet job that the claim was that there were some improprieties going on. I mean, obviously, there's some things that are going to sneak through the cracks, I would imagine, and if we change the value of that, I'm not sure that any of those considerations would necessarily go away or be mitigated by us changing the values.
Yeah, I would suggest that there's no correlation between a contractor's processes and our project requirements.
Right, and the other question that I have, we've got a $150 million IMERF project ahead of us, and it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just the information I'm getting as well, we appear to have given the authority to a private business to select the subcontractors for that work. So am I off by thinking that that's not going to be a CBA agreed project, or help me out with that one?
Or requirements for the
Requirements for CBA, yeah.
CBB.
CBB, yes.
So, yeah.
So Chair, Vice Chair, I can address that. So the IMERF project itself was through a different procurement process. I believe Director Hurley is here and can speak to that in more detail, if that would be helpful.
Sure, I can speak to that, Vice Chair. So this project is unusual in that we did the competitive selection to find a firm that would help us meet our county goals of meeting our 63% recovery goal and our climate emissions reduction goals. So we went through a competitive selection and selected bulk handling systems to deliver basically a package system for us to meet those goals. They then will move through with the construction, and we will be purchasing a portion of the building that's a part of that project. So it won't go through this process. I have had conversations with their owner, and he's assured me that through their partnership with Chambers Construction, who will be doing the construction on the project, they will be meeting the same standards for living wage and health insurance that we're trying to achieve through this program.
Great, thank you. So they are going to be an independently vetted CBB contractor? Is that going to go through a process like what I would assume these fine gentlemen would go through as well?
Vice Chair, that's not my understanding. Is they won't be going through that same process, and we can talk about that more on the 25th when we return. We're also having the contract reviewed by outside legal counsel, and we can discuss their analysis.
Great. Well, the reason I ask those questions, obviously, is they've been asked to me to put forward, but also there's a balance that I'm seeking here as far as like union wage, family wage jobs. Yep, all for it. We should pay the same rate. I think one of the speakers said it really great. You know, I'm in the development business. I know what things cost. He was right when he said plywood and drywall nails and tape all cost the same, and the difference is how you pay your workers and benefits. He's spot on. And so I think the balance of the reason I brought this to the board in the first place was I think the $500,000 threshold is a little unbalanced in a way. And I think in order for us to be able to be as a municipality and a county that brings up small private businesses that eventually can become larger businesses, I think there should be a little more wiggle room on the starting point. And my suggestion would be to maybe have us go back and maybe put that to $1 million or $1.5 million, so that smaller businesses in Lane County could compete for work. But yet, when it really looks at the overall project list that we've done in the last 4 years since this project started, it really would not affect our union members who came and gave such a great presentation today. It wouldn't really affect their jobs per se. Help me out if there's some clarification that might need that, but that's the reason I brought it up in the first place.
Yeah, if I might provide just a couple more thoughts. So I think for me it comes down to what do we value as a county? And, you know, what are we going to invest in? And I think investing in our CBB program, it helps align with our core values and provides facts and data to demonstrate the efforts of the program, which I think is really important. You know, to be able to publicize back to our community, this is what we're doing, we're being intentional about it, and this is what we're providing. And one other item two, having this program in place helps to level the playing field at bid time, where all the general contractors and the subcontractors, at least the first tier subs, are required to participate in the program and to provide these benefits to our trades folks that are at work for these contractors.
Got one more statement. Yeah, thank you for that. I also agree with that, but my concern is also what we value in this county is the ability for minority and marginally owned companies to succeed too. And you said that sometimes smaller contractors not being able to compete for projects that they're capable of performing, albeit may not be able to qualify for the CBB program based on current lack of resources to meet the CBB requirements. So I think as a county, we would value if someone doesn't have those resources, but is it a marginalized or minority-owned construction company, that they would have a fair shot, and we would value that as well.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully support the CBB program the way that it is currently structured. I think it's been really successful with, basically a third of the projects coming through the county over the last 4 years, going through the whole process. And we have 63 different qualifying entities that are able to take, a variety of those jobs, whether they be small, medium, or large. I mean, I find that to be really successful, that they've all applied and are already vetted. And so it doesn't sound from the data that you're providing that we have a lack of qualified entities who can bid on projects. If there was, that might be a slightly different conversation. But if we're not having a lack of qualified providers, that's not seemingly a problem in this case. And part of the community benefits bidding program in general is actually to indeed provide minority and vulnerable populations a chance to actually bid on projects they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And so this gives them a leg up, in fact, in order to provide jobs for people who would otherwise be marginalized and not be able to bid on projects of a size that we would normally carry. And that is part of the statement of values that we invested in when we began implementing this particular protocol, I guess we were calling it. I'm extremely proud of it, but I did hear from some folks in public comment that there are actually ways in which we could probably tighten it up a little bit, specifically when it comes around transparencies for subcontractors. And we can talk about that at a later time, but since we have a conversation on the floor today and we have the audience that we do, I think it's important to call that out and to ensure that we are not enabling labor broker practices within our county through this program or any other program or capital construction project in general. It's important that we are not preying on those that are the most vulnerable in our society, and that they are actually getting paid on the up and up, and provided the actual benefits that this bidding protocol ensures. So if there's a way to have further discussion about that in the future, and if there's a recommendation to come back to the board, I think we should entertain that. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for the history that you provided this morning. I have a couple of questions about smaller contractors. The bidding protocol, everybody pays the same wages. So that's a level playing field regarding people paying the same wages. As far as bidding the material, there is a little bit of inequity there in that if everybody buys from a cash and carry, like for instance Jerry's, everybody gets the same price. But if you bid it out through one of the larger the companies that deliver, they tend to favor their older customers sometimes. So that being said, the inequity is not coming from the pay. It more comes from the cost of the materials. So that being said, I do have a question regarding smaller contractors. If a smaller contractor is vetted, that means they've demonstrated that they will be able to provide they'll be able to satisfy all of the provisions of the bidding process. Is that correct?
Yeah, primarily that they have they have the work history that supports, so each of the contractors basically applies for a specific scope of work. So basically, they're certifying that they're capable and qualified to perform those specific scopes of work.
Okay.
And they can self-identify which of the scopes within the program that they want to, you know, pre-qualify for.
The very specific. And then the $25,000 limit for a subcontractor on a $500,000 project. So any subcontractor, tier one subcontractor is subject to that.
Correct. That would be defined as a first-tier sub. So typically, there's just a couple of subcontractors on a project. We see that a lot with like electrical work or mechanical work, where those scopes of work tend to be more, more complex. Roofing sometimes can qualify depending on the size of the project, and framing, drywall, those kind of trades typically will have a larger dollar amount on projects than landscaping or fire protection or some of those scopes of work.
Well, that satisfies my questions regarding the bidding process. I think I'm not in favor of looking at any changes at this point in time in the levels that we're at, with $500,000, $500,000 being the level. I'm in favor of continuing that, but at the same time keeping an eye on making certain that that people are complying once they have received the bid. We've seen, and I've actually seen evidence of after the bid has been let, that the contract has been shifted to other sources. And I guess the question is, it may be along the same lines that Commissioner Buck was just posing, how do we ascertain that people aren't selling the contract once we've let the contract? I don't have an answer to that, and I don't think you probably have one at this point in time, but that is something that we need to look at in the future, is making sure that everybody is, see, nobody likes liars, nobody likes cheaters, and that is cheating. So, I think we need to make sure that we are in some way able to make certain that the contractors are fulfilling the conditions of their bid, and not subletting it out to some of the to contractors who may be from out of the area, perhaps, or maybe using labor pools that aren't inside of the scope of the government payments, Social Security that was mentioned, workers' comp, et cetera. So I think we need to look at it, continue to look at this program. I think this is not the last time we'll talk about it. I'm not in favor of changing the bidding amount at this point in time.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, I mean, those are numbers speak for themselves, Mr. Ward, so I appreciate that. And yeah, I would be willing to continue currently, but I think this is going to need to be revisited as inflation and things are changing constantly. I do have a question. Well, Commissioner Buck covered a good portion of it very well, and I think it's something that you're hearing the majority of us say, is we want to make sure that any jobs that are being done by Lane County are being done absolutely by what we're requiring people to do. If we're going to talk about level playing fields and so on, we should probably be at the helm of that. If you have contractors, and I'm just picturing some of these contractors coming in as they're gaining employees and as they're continuing on, if they're right at the cusp of being tier 1, tier 2, I mean, is there any leeway with that? Do you allow any sort of percentage, or is it just a yay or nay?
Currently, it's required by statute, so, yeah, it can be 5% of the total contract would trigger a first-tier sub. And we only require that the general contractor discloses on the first-tier subs, and so we don't really have any visibility to who any additional subcontractors they bring on board until they provide a schedule of values for the overall project.
Gotcha. So yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, and I think I'm going to agree with the rest of the board. It's something we'll have to continue to keep an eye on.
Great. Thank you all. So, yeah, good discussion. Appreciate you bringing the item back. I think I hear the concerns about smaller companies being able to meet the threshold, but since some smaller companies have met it, that demonstrates it is possible for smaller companies to do so. we're not seeing a clear line that says, oh, we're really disadvantaging or creating unnecessary barriers. So is there anything, my question is, have we heard back from any companies, large or small, but particularly the smaller companies, since that's what we're talking about, or, you know, any particular, have we heard from anyone that this threshold is out of reach for them and that's why they're not submitting, or do they simply not submit?
So there's sort of twofold. We don't have any visibility with our current procurement method on that group of contractors that we're totally missing. You know, we don't have a feedback loop that tells us, you know, because we have this program, certain contractors haven't bid. The only way we could do that currently is if we, you know, start making phone calls or do some outreach. We are looking at, and then I think it's a relevant point, and to answer your question, we are pursuing a new procurement platform, and I think that the one that we're actually looking at, because we've had a team looking at these, the one that we're actually going to land on, I think it's the same that Public Works has been using. It really would allow us to report back on who all has looked at these projects when they go out for bid, who's actually bidding on them, and what can we do to sort of bridge that gap. And then also be more intentional about outreach to co-bid or disadvantaged companies, because that's something I'm pretty passionate about and want to increase the involvement or engagement with those contractors in our community.
That is, thank you. That exactly answers sort of where I was going, which is, you know, is this a solution in search of a problem, or if there is a problem and we're not aware of it because people don't know how to communicate that problem to us. So it sounds like you are exactly on the track to help us fill that gap, and then hopefully we'll be able to offer some tools, some technical assistance, some other resources to bring those companies up to meet the standard that we are setting, because I do, like most of my colleagues, agree it's a responsibility, and as you said, Mr. Ward, that we have to model for the community and set a certain level of expectation about where public dollars get spent and what we're, you know, who we're lifting up with those dollars. It is a value statement, what we're doing with our money, so I really appreciate that very much. And as many of the commenters this morning said, ultimately this is about money going into the pockets of people who live here in Lane County, which they then spend in local businesses. It is an economic generator beyond the contract itself. I do think, given some of the testimony and what I've heard many folks comment on, this idea of visibility into the actions of the subcontractors, and that could be an area where we strengthen our CBB program. So independent of whatever the thresholds are today or might be at another time, that's another layer that we could be doing to strengthen the program. Because right now we have no mechanism to go back and say, what was the phrase, Commissioner Farr, you know, are they fulfilling the conditions of the bid? Well, if we don't put a condition of the bid be how folks sub the work out, we don't have any teeth. So that sounds great. And it sounds like you all are going to do your work. I may make the assignment later officially, so we're tracking it at agenda setting to have a report back on what you learned from the folks that came to present to us this morning, as well as what you're developing with this new platform. That would be terrific. Mr. Seneca?
It was just a quick thought. And so if somebody was found to not be fulfilling the condition that we're asking, they'd just be pulled off the list of jobs, I assume, then, as subcontractors?
You mean if they were actually found
to not be fulfilling their requirements?
On a project?
Yes, correct.
So basically, you're asking if they would be disbarred from bidding on future projects, et cetera?
Yeah, or is there a penalty, or how would this work out?
Typically, we would not typically insert ourselves in the middle of that. We would refer that to either the contractors board at the state level or the Bureau of Labor and Industries to follow up with those contractors if we observe that kind of behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Thank you. So this was a work session. No action from the board needed. although I don't know, Administrator, do we need to sort of head nod that the assignment's now closed, since this was at the request of the board?
Yeah,
So, looks like the maker of the assignment is nodding yes to closing the
Really
assignment.
the only head
or
that
yes
needs
to-
a nod, thank you.
So Tanya, we can close the assignment, and thank you, panel, for your time, and again, to members of the public who came to speak to this item this morning. Appreciate you all very much, and sounds like there's some follow-up conversations to have, so thank you.
Great job, thanks. Thank you.
All right. We have one more item under administration before announcements, and that is a work session, an update on our equity program and the equity strategic plan. And I know our equity manager, Latife Amato, is with us this morning. Thank you for being here, and she has a panel of staff supporting her, so I will give her half a minute to set up her slides and for staff to assemble at the table.
I'm actually, Chair, I'm happy to kick off the conversation. We're gonna
Terrific, let's do that.
We originally scheduled this as a work session on a Wednesday, and then we were juggling the agenda, right, because we were intending for this to be a discussion that you would have up in the BCC conference room, where everyone could be at the table. So we're gonna, but it got moved to today just because of timing and logistics of other items that needed to happen. So we're just doing some shuffling here and invite everyone who is gonna come up and join us. So, as we get settled, and I think Latife has a few slides here, and we have a number of folks that are all going to contribute thoughts and perspectives, and what we really want is to have an informed conversation with the board about our work, the history of our work, equity work, and the future of this work. So I wanted to share just start with a few comments. I was yesterday, had the opportunity, I love doing this, going and speaking to a class at the University of Oregon. Yesterday there was a class, undergraduate class, called Community Leadership. So I was invited to come talk about, leadership. I oftentimes get invited to talk about these concepts around leadership. And they asked at the end of this hour and a half, do you have any advice for the students? And I had to think for a moment, because, there's a lot of advice that you could provide to young, aspiring kind of individuals who are looking at embarking on their career and their lives. And so I thought for a minute. My answer for advice to these 40-some students was curiosity. That it strikes me that, we start life off as young people very curious, naturally curious about the world and the things around us, and we're exploring and playing with things. And then as we get older, and that carries through our education and through, as we're students. And then as we get older and we move into our careers and our lives, we tend to get more formulated in our thoughts and ideas and approaches to the world. And to me, the process of being a leader is in large part remaining curious. I as a leader myself, I think we all have the opportunity to participate in leadership. This is what we talk to our employees about. It doesn't matter what position you have in an organization. If you have the ability to compel others to achieve common goals, you have the ability to be a leader. So that's what leadership is really about. It's not about the hierarchical thing, but core to successful leadership, I think, is being curious, being open to the world around. And so this is what I shared with the students yesterday, is be a lifelong learner, be a lifelong student, maintain that curiosity throughout your lives. And so I wanted to start with that in mind, because I've been reflecting, and we all have been talking about this discussion today about our equity work. I think it's really important that we start from that place of curiosity and learning. That's certainly the place that I'm coming from. So my comments today will come as a student around this work, not an expert for sure. I want to share that you'll see this in the presentation. We've been doing, we now call it equity work, but human rights, equity, diversity, inclusion. It's been called different things for over 30 years in Lane County, in different forms. It is embedded. This work really is embedded in the foundation of our organization. We do this work when we're recruiting and seeking to retain employees, when we look at compensation and benefits for our employees, when we look at service delivery, the way in which we deliver services to the people that we serve, when we look at big community projects that have big impacts to the community. This work gets embedded in all of that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of authentic value that gets lost in the rhetoric of our divisive othering. We'll talk a little bit about the ideas of othering versus the ideas of belonging. That's our goal here in Lane County, is to create a culture of belonging. And I'll touch on that in a moment. But there's a lot that gets lost in this kind of process of othering. And it happens all the time throughout the world, right? Where we separate ourselves from other people to create some sense of, I don't know, comfort, knowledge, understanding. And part of what we want to do here in Lane County is embrace the process of belonging and reject the process of othering. So I want to be really clear that this work is about our people. It's called a lot of different things. We use different words, and sometimes those words get polarized, or and again, we use this process of othering to point, but it's really about investments in our people, the people that we employ and the people that we serve. So we're seeking in Lane County to create a culture of belonging that embraces our shared humanity, rejects the process of othering, and does two fundamental things: supports all of our employees to be their full selves when they come to do the work that we ask them to do here in our organization, our community, especially those employees from historically and culturally underserved communities. And two, we want to ensure that the people that we serve, and that means a lot of that's everyone in the community on some level that we serve, whether through a direct service that we provide or as a resident and taxpayer of the community. We want to ensure that the people that we serve are at the forefront of every decision, especially the people that are historically or currently underserved by us. So I want to share that just because, again, we use words and there's lingo and there's acronyms and all these things, but at its essence, this work is about our people, the people we employ and the people we serve, and making investments that truly get the best out of the people that we employ and provide the best level of service and representation for the people that we serve. So I'll just close my portion because I just wanted to kick this off and let everyone get settled here by asking that as just today and as we move forward with this work, that we maintain a level of curiosity, interest, openness, and understanding to seek understanding about how we can do our best work, how we can create the best culture and environment for our employees to do their best work, and how we can create the best culture and environment for us to serve the people in our community that we serve. Latifa, you're going to take it from here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Trieger and Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. We have a pretty large panel of 10 folks here to talk about the work. Our hope today is to not necessarily dive deep into the details of the strategies and the goals. That document is available for you all to read, but also for community and for our employees to read, but more really to illustrate what this work looks like. We're going to go through the goals, and we have different panelists that will be ready to talk about how this work has come to life and will continue to come to life in the years moving forward. Can you all hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I don't want to get anyone else sick, So how are we going to spend our time? We're going to quickly just talk about organizational alignment. I'm going to move this over because you got to see this beautiful photo here. How this work aligns with our organization. We're going to talk a little bit about our engagement in getting into this strategic document that we have in front of you today. And then we're just going to go goal by goal, starting with goal number 3 and then moving to goal 1, 2, 4, and 5. And then our next steps and what do we plan to do with this document after we leave this space today. So as you know, equity work has been around at the county for a really long time. Although the language has evolved and it has changed through time, we see it really embedded in our vision, in our purpose, in the strategic lenses, which is the way that we make decisions or aspire to make decisions at the county, in our values, and it currently lives in 11 of our strategic initiatives in our Lane County Strategic Plan. We really aspire to be a county where every single person belongs, so a place where all employees feel valued, welcomed, and can contribute to their fullest, but also, and more importantly, a place where all people who live, work, and play can experience care, have a voice and equal access to services. So I wanted to call out these numbers because this engagement to get into this document is something that we're really proud of. It took us a good 10 months to get this document ready to bring to the board. I wanted to call out 80%. So our equity core team, which is really at the core of creating these goals through a pretty rigorous process that took months, is composed of 80% of our departments at Lane County. So we have 80% representation in that core team. For our employee listening sessions, we engaged 13.5% of our staff, which looks like a small percentage, but that is actually really high engagement for open invitation through a matter of 3 weeks to get people to kind of show up, give us feedback, and all that feedback was incorporated as we were collecting themes into this final document. And then finally, 100%, this is our Equity and Education Committee, which are really our decision makers on what moves forward to the board, what moves forward to management team, what moves forward for policy changes. That particular committee has 100% representation from every single department at Lane County. So our work has a lot of engagement across every single department. And now with our Equity Program Advisory Board, which is going to be starting in about 2 months, we're going to have that community opportunity to really drive this work forward, really for the accountability of holding us to what we put on paper. So I'm going to go and start with goal number 3. So goal number 2 is goal number 3, is cultivating a culture of belonging in which all employees, especially those that come from historically and current underserved communities, can fully thrive and succeed. I am going to hand this over to our Human Resources Director, Alana Holmes, as well as Sheriff Cliff Harold, and they're going to talk to us about goal number 3 and what this looks like in practice. Yeah, why don't you go first, and then...
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Alana Holmes, Chief Human Resources Officer here at Lane County. Again, I think goal number 3 is very exciting and relevant to the work that we all do here at Lane County. And those of us in HR are dedicated to creating a workplace where all employees thrive. Here are some high-level examples that align with this goal. Some specific areas of focus are onboarding of employees, engagement, retention, development, as well as culture and connections. And those are some of the themes you'll hear from many of us today and certainly going forward through the Equity Strategic Plan. So I'm going to talk at a high level about some examples of work that's been done, work that's in progress, and work yet to come. And one of the things I'd like to share is the work that we did to update our Employee Resource Group program. We rolled that out as a pilot with 3 employee resource groups, what we call ERGs. Those included BIPOC, Child Care Giver Connections, and Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+. These were launched and in operation throughout COVID, and as you can imagine, one of those specifically, there were a lot of impacts happening when we were in isolation, not coming to work, schools were closed, childcare was closed, and we had a workforce of individuals, and same thing across the nation, of people trying to figure out how to do their full job, be full-time parents and educators and caregivers all at the same time. And that group, which I am a sponsor of, so I feel like I can speak a little bit more specifically to, spent a lot of time in their monthly meetings with ideas and their struggles and how to support each other, and ideas for us at Lane County on what kind of resources we could be providing as some examples of the work that they've done, and certainly the other ERGs as well. So, the ERGs are known for adding values for employees so that they can feel included, find a place to connect with individuals that have similar interests, issues, or life experiences. And then having these in turn can help employees feel engaged and supported in the workplace. So as we updated our program this year, we doubled the number of ERGs, and we've added to the group neurodivergent, disability awareness, and veterans to the mix. So those 3 are brand new. They launched in January and have been very well received, and there are high numbers of individuals involved in those as well as the original three. And so, again, when we think about all of those ERGs, I like to think of the ability to impact our work culture by having these active participating groups. They add voices, experience, and perspective to the work that we're doing here in our organization. And in the coming year, we will have opportunities to streamline our engagement process across the organization, create a better framework for employees to access information on available ERGs and the resources that are being developed throughout the different ERGs. And then additionally, and you'll certainly hear more about this regarding data, there is a group working to better track the utilization of ERGs and other employee data to better support underrepresented employees and those in groups within the ERGs. Another example, and this goes way back to our previous Lane County Strategic Plan, we had, if you can recall, 5 employee engagement initiatives within our previous plan, and one of those included mentorship programs, so that we were to go and look and develop a program to roll out for our organization. So HR had a team of representatives across the organization. I want to say back in 2018, they did a lot of work. They presented to all department heads who gave a big thumbs up to the program, and we were going to roll it out. And then in 2019 and 2020, with COVID hitting, we had to put a pause on that program. But we also had heard from a lot of employees about an interest in finding ways to connect with mentors. So what we did this past year was kind of take that framework again, put together a new group of individuals, and utilize our equity lens toolkit to further assess the program, kind of dust it off and see, well, what could we do now? And as a result, we're starting with the pilot program in Public Works. Thank you, Dan, to you and your team. And when the pilot is concluded, we will survey individuals who participated in the program and assess the next steps so that we can build a better Lane County-wide program. Also, it's really important for us in HR to look at additional areas of employee life cycles to create a more inclusive work environment. So, you know, the cycle, I mean, really it begins when someone's applying to the organization, but from the moment they come on board, the onboarding process, learning about their positions, and some of the things that our county administrator talked about with respect to benefits and development and opportunities to, move into different roles, things of that sort. One of the things that HR will be working on, both individually within our department, but also with others in the organization, is to reassess our onboarding, our onboarding processes, both at the county-wide level when we have new employees and as the department level when employees are back in their own departments, getting grounded in their teams and the work that they do. We want to find where the opportunities are to better connect employees to help build that culture of belonging from their very first day here at Lane County. And then build into that life cycle stay interviews. As we know, those are a component that have shown statistically, and I think even in the experiences here for employees, when we provide stay interviews, we allow employees to be heard, and it's all about them, and we want to hear from them. Why do you stay here at Lane County? What is it that keeps you engaged and motivated, and how can I, as your supervisor, best support you in your work? So what we hope to do is really roll that out to more departments and see more regularity in that usage as well. We continue with our talent acquisition group to build relationships with local and regional educational partners, such as the University of Oregon and Lane Community College. We are really working hard to continue to build pipelines for robust internship opportunities, and certainly once we have interns here in the organization, it allows us to further engage them after that for potential future employment opportunities here at the county. One example, I hope I'm describing this the right way, Eve, is the Family Human Services Department at the U of O. There's a practicum for student field study that allows students kind of like to have an internship opportunity and build talent so that we can recruit from our local population into areas like human services, veteran services, developmental disability services, as well as other areas in our organization. And just a super high level, a couple of points about some of our interns that we've had in HR even this year. One from the Siletz tribe who talked about her experience at having an internship at Lane County has been life-changing for her. That coming from the reservation and the life that she had and then being exposed in the internship, you know, Laura Luther, our talent acquisition strategist, took her to a talent summit conference, and being exposed to the work and to how we operate, much less as a local government, having the richness of the support and the experience here for her is something she'll walk away with. And we hope to, you know, stay connected with that individual for future employment opportunities. Another individual that we have as an intern is a first-generation college student who participated in our annual Civic Engagement Day and said that that experience was so powerful for them because he learned so much about local government. And I know for those of us that are in this world, we might take that for granted after a while about, you know, how cities operate, how counties operate. But for people that are outside the traditional areas of experience, it brings a different level of depth, of comfort and understanding and confidence in better connecting into our world. So these are really valuable hands-on opportunities for individuals in our community. And a big shout out to Laura, Rob, and Jobin for the work that they continue to do there. And building onto everything with talent acquisition, this past year we joined with our equity colleagues in Partners in Diversity and building a pilot around that membership with that organization. And we had enough success there, and we were really excited about that connectivity that we've decided to continue on with that membership. Partners in Diversity provides strategic avenues for outreach to applicants for those in communities around the state of Oregon that, you know, we want to seek out to apply for jobs and ideally work for us here at the county. They also provide workshops, training and development opportunities, continuing education, and they sponsor community gatherings on a regular basis that we've had several employees here from Lane County attend and show up to connect with individuals. And it really, again, goes back to that employee engagement, feeling supported and connected by opportunities that we provide for them here. During our pilot, we successfully hired 3 outstanding individuals who bring diverse perspectives and experiences to our Lane County team, and they cited Partners in Diversity as the avenue for them being connected in to become applicants and ultimately being hired. These hires not only contribute to a more inclusive workplace, but also bring fresh insights and innovations to our workforce. The membership with Partners in Diversity has already attracted over 147 new applicants that express interest in joining our organization. And this surge in interest is a clear indicator of the appeal that our commitment to diversity and inclusivity has, making us a more attractive employer of choice to a broad array of candidates. And that's a large focus of our work. And then statistics, because I know we like to hear about those a little bit. As you know, Steve and others mentioned, and many of you are aware, we've built the work of equity in a variety of ways. And one of those, I want to say in the mid, 2014, 2015, was hiring a couple of specific positions. And one of those was in HR to do talent, acquisition and outreach into a variety of communities. And so we started tracking the data at that time. And in 2014, when we started, when just one slice of the data of persons of colors who applied for positions, we would see 17% out of all applications being persons of color. And in 2024, it is now 28% of all applicants in any given year being persons of color. Corresponding to that, in 2014, our hires of persons of color were 11% versus the 17% of applicants. And you fast forward 10 years later to 2024, and our hires are now at 20% for persons of color. So, again, if you look at, for 2024, our applicant pool of 28% being people of color, we have a gap in the hires of about 8%. And so we always have goals to try to, get closer and closer to our diversity of applicant pools and what we see in our hiring processes. So we'll continue to track this and do the work to ensure, you know, a broad representation of experiences for candidates that we bring into our organization. And then just the last thing for me to close out, you've heard a lot today about culture of belonging and how important that is for the work that we do here, for our workforce, and for our community. So on May 9th in HR, we held a half-day, highly interactive session, actually here in this space, on the topic of cultures of belonging. You know, if we're going to do that work, we really need to kind of dive in and just have the space to feel safe, ask questions, do learning about this topic. And this was specifically designed for human resources staff, and it recognizes that our roles are kind of unique in that we interact and work with employees across the organization every single day, like many times before they start working here, all the way through the end of their employment here with the county. And so we felt it was really important to get grounded in that work. And the event was very well received by all of the staff. There was a lot of interest in more hands-on learning, especially regarding opportunities to encourage different viewpoints, folks making less assumptions about the intent of others, practice bridging conversations. How do we do that? It's more of a skill set than maybe you might think at first until you dive into that work a little bit. Also about leaning into moments of discomfort, which, you know, you have 2,000 employees that are all human beings and we interact, and sometimes those go more smoothly than others. But how do we lean into those opportunities, meet people where they are, and practice keeping connections open? So these are some of the skills that those of us in HR will continue to develop this coming year to help build a strong foundation for a culture of belonging here at Lane County. And I'm going to stop there because I know we've got a lot of other great presenters. And just thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alana. So I'm going to hand it over to the Sheriff to talk about initiatives 2 and 3, which is about diversifying our workforce, but also retention strategies with the specific lens of retention and attraction for female deputies. And I have a video. Do you want me to play the video first or afterwards?
Afterwards, that's all right. I'm excited to get to show it. So, Board, I just was invited to share some of the things the Sheriff's Office has been engaged in over a period of time to make ourselves approachable and to build relationship with everybody in Lane County, various different communities. And we've been engaged in that work for a long time, prior to me being sheriff. But by building those relationships and making ourselves approachable to those communities, then we also hope to open a door to recruiting folks to come to work for us from those communities. So just a couple of quick examples of those. We do the annual Shop with a Cop for disadvantaged, underprivileged youth. We do Coffee with a Cop in small communities to sit down and build relationship. I've sat down and tried to engage with various different leaders of communities to build a point of contact and make myself approachable. We staff an asylum seeker presentation where we provide just general information about law in the community for folks in the community. And then with respect specifically to recruitment and retention, we've engaged for quite a period of time. You all know we've been recruiting since 2012 when the levy first passed. And specifically for female applicants because we have specific female staffing requirements in the jail. So we've engaged in a variety of strategies. One of those is having female staff go to community events that are maybe marketed towards females more. We've re-engaged our cadet program. That was a few years ago, but the first 6 cadets, when the program was brand new, of the first 6, 4 were females. All 4 of those female cadets. Cadets are 18 to 21. All 4 of them are now deputy sheriffs, were hired as deputy sheriffs once they became 21. We have our career development program, which I've shared with you before, but in particular, we have 2 recently promoted female sergeants who came up through the career development program on the retention side. And most specifically with respect to our current engagement, so we've worked with County Council in order to do a female deputy sheriff recruitment. So obviously we have to go through a process to make sure that we have it's called BFOQ, bona fide occupational qualification, to post a position that's available for female applicants specifically, and this is the first time we've done that. And so that's open right now, so if there's anybody listening to me right now that's interested in our female recruitment, we'd love to have you apply. And then with that, I'd love to share the video. We worked with Metro to promote a video for this recruitment.
I work in corrections, so I work at the Lane County Adult Corrections Facility. I work housing and I work booking. So I lodge people in jail, and then I also facilitate different things once they're housed. My dad has been a deputy my whole life. He really improved a lot of people's lives, and I also saw him making a lot of really positive connections in the community, and it was a super cool environment to grow up in. So I joined the cadet program, and I really found a love for law enforcement and for the sheriff's office particularly.
Well, I actually had been interested in law enforcement for a long time since I was a kid, but growing up, I was kind of almost taught to avoid law enforcement and be somewhat afraid of them. So for a long time, I avoided. I would almost be scared just by seeing a police officer. But as I grew up, I had interactions with law enforcement, and they actually turned out to be quite the opposite of what I was expecting it to be. A lot of it was positive. I mean, there was an instance I got a speeding ticket, but I was actually very grateful to the police officer. He was so polite, so respectful, and very informative on what I could do with my driving. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized I should probably, if it's something I want to do, I should do it now because I'm getting older. I either take my chances now or just stay where I'm at. And so I decided to start pursuing it, and luckily I'm here. Lane County gave me an opportunity, and I've loved it since.
So I kind of figured out maybe early 20s that I was interested in law enforcement. I'm just not really sure what. And then I landed my job in police records, and I actually really fell in love with that job and the help that we got to do for people there. And then, yeah, just decided that I was ready to move on from the office work environment and, you know, give back in a different way.
Yeah, every day is very different. Even though I work in the correctional facility, so it's not the same as going different places every day necessarily. The scenery stays the same for the most part. However, every day presents new challenges and different opportunities to learn and grow and connect with people.
And I feel like I've grown a lot, tremendously, since I've started working there.
And I feel like every day there's something new. The different people come in, and you're doing different things, different situations every day. So I like the variety of that part of the job.
If you're considering applying at the sheriff's office, I would definitely do it.
I would say go for it, because I was the same way. It was intimidating to going into a mostly male-dominated career, but the coworkers that I have are the best. Very supportive of their female coworkers, always there to help. I really like the crew that I work with.
Not only is it like such a great family atmosphere, but it's just such a wonderful job. And to be able, there's so many different opportunities. You don't always have to work in the jail. You don't have to work in patrol. There's other outlets and different things that you can plug yourself into, which is another reason that the sheriff's office was such a good choice for me, because you can work in the woods, you can work on the dunes, you can work so many different places. And so I just thought that aspect of this career also was super awesome.
It's a great opportunity, and I wouldn't want anybody not to apply because they feel like they don't know if they could do the job or not. Come do ride-alongs with us in the jail. Don't let the thought of potentially, not making it or not being strong enough, your personal limitations, don't let that stop you from applying and potentially growing in a career like this.
You already have communication skills that you can utilize. And you'd probably be surprised how well you can do the job. Please come work here.
I think I'll throw my water on the floor. I think I'll let the video speak for itself, because I don't think I can do any better than that. I'm super proud of how that turned out, and we're looking forward to seeing how this recruitment goes.
Great job, Metro.
So now we're going to go to goal number 1, which is aligning our county-wide equity efforts. This one, I'm actually going to invite Eve Gray, our Director of Health and Human Services, to give an example of how we do this with HNHS.
Sure, thank you. So, we have focused quite a bit on creating continuity between the equity efforts that are happening at every level of the organization, because we need them to happen at every level of the organization in order to advance this work as rapidly as possible. So I'll give examples of a couple of different projects that we've been working on and how we engage at different levels in order to be as successful as possible. One of these programs is related to improving translation services. So we have had concerns brought forward from staff, particularly bilingual staff, that we have varying levels of skills in the contractors that we utilize to provide translation and interpretation services. Translation being written documents, interpretation being live assistance with a client in an appointment. And we got a group together who rapidly realized that there was county-level work happening on the translation services front as well, related to our efforts to receive CDBG funding again, and accountabilities that we have toward meeting some federal goals and requirements. So the team got together with Latife and Steve Adams and the team that is working on this, identified what are these federal requirements that we are held accountable to as a county, and made sure that we understood what the direction was in terms of county-level policies. We then went back at a department level and began to review the contractors that we utilize, because we contract at a department level for these services, and identify who seems to be providing the best level of service, how do we evaluate that, but then that department level analysis met a certain threshold, except we also run healthcare clinics, and there are special federal regulations around medical translation and medical interpretation that we had to take a granular level deeper in order for us to assure that we were meeting the needs specific to medical translation and interpretation services. So that happened in a subcommittee of the actual department work. This work continues to be ongoing. I don't know that we will ever get to a point where this particular one is done, but just shows how important it is to have the through line across each of the levels of the county. Another example of this work is the work that we've done on gender-affirming care. So there are certainly barriers that particularly staff, but also to a certain extent patients or clients face, that we need assistance at the county level in order to resolve. So for our systems, what name does our system pull when it sends an email, an automated email out? And what we're finding is that some of our systems pull dead names. So that individuals who have transitioned and no longer are using that name are having emails sent out on their behalf with their dead name, which is very traumatizing for individuals. And that is something that has to be dealt with on a county level, because these are county level systems. At the department level, in our core team, department core team, we've been focusing on, okay, what are the standards of training that we need to make sure that everyone has fundamentally within Health and Human Services when they are working with or interacting with clients? Basic training on pronouns, on how you work with someone who is in transition, how you identify how to refer to someone in a way, and also why this is important. why it's important for us to be gender affirming in our care. But then more specifically at the division level, we have providers in the CHC who provide hormone therapy for individuals who are in transition. That's a whole different level that we then need to invest in to say, okay, what pharmacies carry these medications regularly, and what information can we get on where to send our patients and clients so that we know they're going to be treated well no matter where they go in the community, and how are we directing our patients within our clinic, creating a welcoming environment for people who are going through the process of transition. So this I think that it's important for us to recognize that the work must happen at every level of the organization, because there's different challenges and barriers that we face to addressing inequities within our workplace and within the care environment. And we have to make sure that we stay connected so that we're not all going off in different directions. So those are a couple of examples of the ways in H&HS that we have viewed equity work with the kind of through line that's discussed in goal number 1. Anything else you wanted me to cover? Okay.
So I'm going to hand over goal number 2. We have Greg Rickoff, Taina Saltishak, and myself. I'll speak a little bit to goal number 2, which is the use of disaggregated data to measure progress of equity efforts and for decision making. So we'll start with Greg, and then we'll make our way down to data governance with Taina.
Chair Trieger, Commissioners, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be talking on this topic. Like a number of departments, Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services relies on state funding to run programs. Youth Services, Parole and Probation, and Deflection all have funding requirements that racial and ethnic disparities in service and treatment be tracked, diagnosed, and addressed. All 3 divisions have obligations to ensure services are culturally and linguistically responsive. We also need to ensure that the work is trauma-informed and evidence-based. Federal and state grants require descriptions of agency plans to address linguistic and cultural barriers. And so consequently, there's very little of the CJRS's equity work that is viewed as discretionary. Lane County Equity staff, in collaboration with Data and Analytics, provided assistance to helping staff teams address these needs. On May 21, the 2 managers met with 15 staff members to aid in the development of CJRS Equity Strategic Plan. Latife and Taina Saltishak provided training, context, and framework for the CJRS teams to build an equity strategic plan. The use of data sets required by granting agencies figured prominently in the team's discussions and plans. The work also addressed employee well-being and engagement. CJRS is a diverse department that accurately reflects the demographics of the county. Recruitment, retention, and advancement of employees remains critically important, and it requires intentional and focused work. The county's equity and data partners were instrumental in helping the department organize this work, and having these centralized services really benefits the departments that have these obligations. Thanks.
I've never actually been here before, so making sure you can all hear me. Perfect. Okay. Great. So as has been mentioned various times, both in previous presentations in front of the board earlier today and from Alana and Greg sharing that data is an important piece in equity work. And I'm going to start a little dry and share some key definitions because I think it's very important to kind of make this work clear in what we're really saying we're doing with data. And so the first definition I want to share is disaggregated data. And so ultimately, all that means is that it is data broken down into smaller, meaningful categories. So instead of treating everyone as all of the data as one monolithic group, we are able to examine specific subgroups. For example, by race and ethnicity, gender, region, level of education, etc. Also listed in this goal is the data life cycle. What is that? The data life cycle is the stages that data goes through from its creation or acquisition through its usage and maintenance, and then its eventual disposal or archiving. So what that often looks like is we start thinking about data from the moment of its inception when we come up with a project plan. We think about how we're collecting that data, acquiring that data, where will it be maintained and stored, who will be able to access, how will we access that information, then the actual evaluation or analysis of said data, and then ultimately archiving or disposing it when it's no longer relevant or it's no longer necessary. And then finally, data governance is a set of principles and processes for data collection, management, and use. The goal is to ensure that data is accurate, consistent, available for that use, while protecting data privacy and security. Ultimately, data governance initiatives bring together partners and work to standardize how data is collected, secured, shared, and used collaboratively. So why is all of this important to equity work? Ultimately, by using data, we're able to truly dig into what is working and what is not working, and go beyond simply a high-level aggregated number or an overall average, and really pinpoint for who is this working, for what groups. One way I like to think about it or like to talk about it with people is to constantly ask the question, for who? Does this really is a countywide statistic? And I actually put no statistics in my presentation, strange for the data person. But ultimately, if we think about countywide numbers, countywide statistics, does that actually represent all groups in our community? Does that represent all of our employees? And we really need to think by using disaggregated data, by taking data and breaking it down more granularly, are we truly meeting that same level for historically underserved communities or historically marginalized individuals? So by analyzing disaggregated data, we have better understanding of our community needs. We're able to make data-informed decisions to prioritize resources and address disparities. Ultimately, the way data governance and the data lifecycle play into this is that to do this work effectively, we have to identify those standards so we can balance the necessity of granular disaggregated data with the necessity of privacy and security considerations, especially in an area such as Lane County. And as we move through the data lifecycle, we get to be mindful from the moment we start a project to when we start collecting data to make sure we are able to balance that need for granularity and disaggregation to give the nuanced view we are hoping to see. So ultimately, data governance and disaggregation are not just technicalities. They are ultimately the tools that when we use them wisely, we ensure that our decisions uplift every voice in our community and that no one is left behind. I could dig into many examples, but ultimately that data is about the people. It's not about simply the numbers. And it's by using disaggregated data and working collaboratively across the organization to set these standards, we can be truly curious and continue asking that question of for who, and are we really meeting our goals and for who? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to illustrate two recent projects that really put this goal into practice, which was the Parks Levy Survey and also the Stabilization Survey, where we set goals of engagement, of really trying to center the folks with lived experience, right? So when we're talking about certain design elements of the Stabilization Center, who should we be listening to? It should be those who would be utilizing the Stabilization Center. So we set a goal of 70% of survey takers having been folks with current lived experience. And through the use of data, how we designed the survey and how we tracked the survey over time, we were able to say, well, okay, we're not on track. So what do we need to do differently in our survey distribution efforts in order to meet those goals? And it was a very similar process with the Parks Levy when we looked at the different barriers that people experience in accessing parks, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it was cultural, was it physical, was it neurodivergency, all of those. We asked folks to self-identify in those demographics so that we can really say, like, well, if this group is not giving us a voice, they're not taking the survey, then we need to do something different to collect their aspirations for where we want this money to go. So that led to us recognizing that surveys are not the best for certain folks, and instead we need to do focus groups, listening sessions. So all of that is just an example of goal number 2 of how we're using data in those demographic disaggregated numbers to really be more intentional in the type of work that we do. And this will connect back to goal number 5 when we get there as well. All right, moving on to goal number 5, which is secure ongoing financing and effectively resourcing our equity work across the organization. So one of the things that we are trying to do is ensure that we are really being smart about our investments in equity. So that includes things like our internship programs, partnerships with other organizations, creating MOUs with different organizations so that we can support each other in our training needs and our consultant needs. It also means getting smart and applying for grants, right? So that's really, in essence, what that means. But it also means that we have a different approach to our budgeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine Moody to speak a little bit about that process.
Move towards the mic. The cord is only so long. Thank you. So a few things on the budget process. As we all know, where we spend our limited resources, how we spend those, really at the end of the day shows what our values are. So it's very important to show this information through the budget. You've heard a lot about the structure that's occurring, starting at the board level with the strategic plan and the strategic lenses that have been put in place, and then what departments are doing to actually make that work happen in their services. Our budget document is also a very valuable communication tool, something we put out twice a year with a proposed and an adopted budget. And so we really want to focus on how we're communicating with the public on the things that are already happening and have been happening for decades. So through the budget document, we focus on a section in our overview section, so I'm just going to point to it, even though I'm sure you've all read it, right? The 500-page document. So that we have a section that just gives an overview of the equity and diversity efforts of the county. That section's been in the document for about a decade, this very specific section that details community efforts, countywide efforts, department-specific efforts, employee training, just as it's morphed over the years. So that's something that people could look to. This most recent year, we've really focused on our performance measures, which is something that already exists in our budget document, where we're trying to show how we're being effective in our programs. Are we meeting the goals that we're setting for ourselves? So with the proposed document, we asked departments to be looking at incorporating a measure that is related to the equity strategic plan. So to use those lenses to describe that, and then to refine it when we get to the adopted document. So if you looked at the proposed document and those measures, you'll see that some of the departments are more refined, and then they're developing it as we're finalizing the strategic initiative, the strategic plan for the equity. Just that what we measure, so that we show the effectiveness and that we show that we're having impacts on our equity goals, also leads back to the data governance. So another way that we're showing how that data can inform decisions by the board and others, so that really we get to the end of the day where we're having equitable outcomes, positive outcomes for the community as a whole, employees, public, across the board.
All right, and then finally, goal number 5, which is fostering an inclusive and equitable framework for community engagement and for civic participation. So 2 different things. I'm going to hand this over to Dan to start us off, and also to Eve to speak about goal number 5.
Okay. So good morning, board. Pleasure to talk about this goal of the equity program and how we put this into practice with parks. So I liked what you said, Christine, a moment ago about showing our values. This was an opportunity to show our values with the Parks Levy. So when that was passed a year and a half ago, which will bring in $31 million over the next 5 years into our park system, we wanted to make sure that the projects that move forward with that would help with advancing access and inclusion into our parks. We did a survey a few years prior with an intern from U of O and found that disadvantaged and underrepresented underrepresented populations within our county weren't accessing our parks at the same utilization as other members of the community. And that was a number of factors around safety, feeling welcomed in the park, and issues around access, both to the physical aspects of the park and transportation to our parks. So we went through a process to use our Equity Lens Toolkit. That's our way of operationalizing this work, and we use the Parks Levy as our pilot program in Public Works. And it was a terrific process. Latife helped a lot with that. Brett Henry really engaged with this. And Latife already talked about the tailored engagement we did around surveying and trying to make sure we captured specific goals for specific populations within the county. And we also, I'll jump to the third bullet there, strengthening partnerships. We used the Equity Lens Toolkit to bring in our partners to look at how we were moving these projects forward with an eye on equity. There are a number of questions that we ask in the toolkit. A few of those are, what are we trying to do? Who will be impacted, and are they being included? How are we intentionally engaging multiple perspectives? And there are a number of questions that, try to get us along this path to make sure that we are bringing in all the voices that should be brought in on this topic to move things forward. So we brought in our partners at Mount Pisgah, for example, at Friends of Beaufort Park, the Friends of Beaufort Park and the Arboretum, and we had an all-day retreat where we looked at projects that there's a part in it called Ideate, and we broke up into groups and we brainstormed different projects that we could potentially bring forward. And I remember that our group had this crazy idea of having an all-terrain wheelchair that could access the park. Well, lo and behold, a few months later, we learned about a group, David's Chair, a nonprofit, that could provide this service, and we were able to engage with them. And now there's one out at our Hesida Beach Park, and then you may have seen in the newspaper, we're now deploying these out at Howard Buford. So it's come into action. So it's been really exciting to see, as an example. Diversifying community and advisory board membership. I'll touch on that as well. Just a few years ago, our Parks Advisory Committee was made up entirely of middle-aged white men. As a middle-aged white man, I know we have a perspective of value to offer, but we shouldn't be the only voice in the room. And so through tailored engagement around our recruitment, as we had vacancies, we've added 2 women to the Parks Advisory Committee, as well as a person of color, and it's great to be able to diversify the voices as we're looking at all our parks decisions. And then the last one there, establish strong government-to-government relationships with the 5 tribes that have service areas that include Lane County. A couple years ago, we formed an intergovernmental tribal relations work group, and I have the privilege of serving and learning and growing on that group with about a dozen county employees, and we made a charter of how we're going to try to engage with the tribes better. We have had kind of a haphazard approach to engaging with the tribes, where employees across the organization were reaching out to the tribes to ask for things and treating them more like stakeholders and not a sovereign nation, as we should be engaging with them in government-to-government relations. And so we've developed a number of objectives to try to improve this around foundation building, planful engagement, demonstrating commitment, and building trust and collaboration. So we've done that through first learning the tribal histories we as a starting point to make sure we understand their perspectives as much as we can. So the members of that work group have gone through more intensive training around issues of tribal histories and the topic of decolonization. We also had an equity summit recently, just about a month ago. That's the lower left picture there, where we invited employees across the organization and from our partners in the community to learn more about tribal histories and Native perspectives. We're also trying to be engaging our Indigenous populations in a way where we are building relationships first before we start asking for things. We want to have a genuine, committed relationship. And so we're going to the tribes to where they are instead of expecting them to come to us. So the bottom right picture was a group that went down to the Coquel Restorations Celebration. The Coquel were one of the many tribes across the country that were terminated. So they were celebrating their 34th year of being restored as a tribe. And you see Commissioner Farr joined us for that. It was a terrific celebration, and we started making personal relationships that will help this work.
Okay, Great. So I'll just touch on bullet points 2 and 3. In bullet point 2, I think it's important for us to think about how we are structuring the expectations of our committees. So, for example, the Community Health Centers Board, or the Federally Qualified Health Center Board, it is a requirement from the Health Resources and Services Administration that at least 51% of the members be individuals who are served by our clinics. And that structural expectation builds equitable distribution of voice and power into the process. And we are seeing similar work, not necessarily as a requirement, but by outreach on our Community Health Assessment Oversight Committee that we're putting together. We have done tremendous strategic outreach into culturally specific communities and are coming with an advisory committee that has an overrepresentation of people of color compared to the distribution within our community. And why is that important? It is because on almost every health measure that we look at within our community, people of color have a disproportionate share of negative outcomes. So we need to make sure that their voices are at the table in more than just a tokenized kind of way. And a big part of how we are accomplishing that, at least in the public health sphere, is with our community partnerships program. So COVID really brought to light for us the disparate levels of trust within our community in public health and disparate levels of access to various types of health treatment. And as part of public health modernization, there has been an investment in community partnerships, in us having staff who go and specifically do outreach into culturally specific communities to make sure that we are building relationships, we are building trust, we are hearing the voice of individuals who have traditionally been marginalized. And we also are doing this work strategically in rural areas of our community because we know that the voice of individuals who live in rural areas, they often feel that it's drowned out because we have the urban core within this county, and it is so important to do that strategic outreach and to make sure that we have the geographic distribution as well on the committees that we are putting together. So that's some examples of the type of work that we're doing within H&HS that is consistent with this fifth goal of the strategic plan.
Just wanted to end with what our next steps are. So now we have this document, now what? It really comes down to creating action plans. So we are going to be working with, there's a typo there, with our Equity Program Advisory Board. EPAB really is going to help us with the accountability of what we're putting forward. These action plans will be created with community, that will be co-created with our staff at various levels, at department levels and also at the level of different subgroups. So really trying to bring it forward and really go through a prioritization exercise of what are we going to focus on in this first year, second year, and third year. So now we have open it up for questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you all. So much great information, so many of you, and it's really great to have so many folks from staff come present all on one item. It really shows the need for an integration and activity across departments of this work. Thank you. We'll turn it over to the board. We have a 10-ish, generous 10 minutes or so for questions, conversation. As you say, it's ongoing, so there'll be lots of other opportunities as well. Commissioner Beck, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm super excited about the entire strategy and plan you've put forward. You've clearly thought about it for a long time, and I know that this work has been part of the county for a decade or more now as we go along. And each year it becomes even better and better. You know, this is my 6th year, and I've even seen a difference from 2018 to what you're proposing today as full implementation throughout all departments, and with as much participation within each department as you have now is really, really exciting. I have to say, my favorite is your T-shirt of radical belonging. I love it. I love it, and I think it's just like, without words, the perfect example of what we're trying to do here at the county to ensure that people know that whomever you are, wherever you are, when you're in Lane County, you're accepted, and you can participate at any level that you want to. It just is an idyllic picture portraying that, so thank you. I've known about some of the programs that that have been presented, especially when it comes to, say, talent acquisition management, of trying to really recruit people of a variety of different backgrounds and experiences to come and enhance what we do here within the county. But I don't know that I knew to the granular level, and I'm sure you're not even getting to the granular level of what you all have been working on, but going down to this detail alone today is really helpful for me to learn about what we are doing each and every day, because sometimes we just get cursory information at the board level, and I don't really fully acknowledge or know all the deep ongoing work that is being done every single day throughout the county and in every department. So I appreciate being able to have a little bit of extra time to learn about what each department is doing, and knowing that they're each unique and they each, approach equity in the way that works for them. But then at the same time, you come together and you're able to share cross-departmentally exactly what's happening and keep us all moving forward. I appreciate that. And I also, in particular, appreciate being included in some of the tribal relationship work that we're doing. That is something I'm still learning quite a bit on. It wasn't something that I learned in school when I was young, I'll tell you that. So as I've been reading the material and getting to understand our Sovereign Nation partners, coincidentally, my child is learning in 4th grade about all the 9 tribal entities in the state of Oregon, and I can now, at this point in my life, really fully appreciate that dichotomy of, education in our system from the point when at that age, this just wasn't something that was part of the curriculum whatsoever, and now it is. And that will just show a generational shift over time of acknowledgement and support and respect for our tribal partners. And knowing that this comes today on the cusp of Pride Month is also just apropos for us celebrating people of all kinds. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Well, thank you for the pretty thorough explanation. And I really listened to every word, particularly when you talk about kids in school learning things that we in school didn't learn. And it's really it really harkens to, and I'm looking directly at Director Gray, when you talk about the services in the clinics, about translation services, for instance, about when we're the people that we serve, not just the people who are serving them, but the people that we serve, making certain that the dignity and the availability of information is clearly at the front line. I think the folks that we work with in the Health and Human Services are people who are, in many cases, experiencing some of the most tension-filled days of their life. We're talking about people who are going through transition, for instance, and with anyone who has experience there knows that people are so on the verge of breaking down on a daily basis, and making certain that we're able as a county to provide the services to the people who need them at the time that they need them, with the dignity, the access, the equity, and with the information that they need in ways that they can get it. Bravo. I look at the work that's happening in Health and Human Services in particular, and it's remarkable how many people that we serve and the dignity that we are able to do that, perform that with. So I really applaud that. And I also applaud in the correctional facility, in the jail, talk about people who are experiencing some of the most tension-filled days of their lives, the people that we serve in the jail, and finding ways to serve them with the dignity, with appropriate dignity that that they deserve. When we experience people who are experiencing who are in the worst times of their life, that is when our work is the most critical. And doing it in the fashion that you've described, Director Ray, and in the fashion that not you described, Sheriff, but that the participants in the video described, it really is. It gives me encouragement that we are moving in the direction, Latife, that we are moving in the direction that you envisioned the day that you came here. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Great work. Sheriff, I would be interested to see how this goes with reaching out. And I mean, great video. If Deputy Torres can't sell that, I don't know who can. And I also noticed in the name of equity, you've got a female deputy with the last name Douglas working in Lane County. So the ultimate equity there. I really wish Brett was here. I thank you, Director Hurley, for coming over here. Him and I have had some amazing talks about David's chair, and you think about the very first time you went out and you smelled the beach and you just felt that cool breeze on your face. And, Wayne County's going to make that happen. These kind of things are just steps that you don't think about it unless you are going holistically like this entire team is doing. So thank you, everybody. I really, I know Commissioner Farr and I have spent a good amount of time at Three Rivers with doing some of the tribal work there. And, Director Hurley, you hit on it. Sovereign Nation, they take that very, this is something that they talk about every time they get a chance, because that's how we need to interact with them. And, I appreciate you guys bringing that up. So great work, team, everybody. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just say that this is a deep and involved work, and I am more informed now than I've ever been, and I appreciate all of you that come forward and gave me some really great information that I didn't know existed. So I guess in the biblical world, I need to repent a little bit in public and tell you that I didn't know, but it's really good. But I also want to tell you that I fully support the work of belonging. I think that, anyone who comes to our county, comes to our area, comes to this state needs to know that they're welcome, however they identify, whatever lifestyle they want to live, however they want to call themselves, whatever, they're welcome here, and we're going to help them succeed, because I think a rising tide raises all boats, and that's the kind of team I want to be a part of. But I want to be vulnerable here just for a second. I don't want to be an elected official. I just want to be a human just for a minute. I felt othered the other day, and I want to tell you why. And I want to tell you what concerns me a little bit about this program, about how it's marketed, how it's branded. I spent 40 years in advertising. And when I proposed, there's no mistake that my highest priority in this job I do is public safety. And when we were looking at losing 3 jobs of public safety, I started looking at what we really valued as a community, and we value public safety. Where could we make some cuts so that public safety system wasn't slighted in the least? And what I looked at was Health and Human Services had 72 people involved in DEI work. We spent $1.2 million on this program as an average, and I'm just wondering if the return on our investment and our tangible data would support that versus looking at what maybe the dispensing of a few people in public safety would cause the county. So when that was proposed in front of the Budget Committee, it was, I think, mistyped. I had 2 ideas there. I had one that the performance audit position and another one could be eliminated, and maybe the DEI work could also be examined, but it was only presented in one vein. And from that vein, it looked as though that a certain commissioner maybe have targeted someone's job or maybe have targeted a program. And I think that was really maliciously aligned. And so as a human, I want to say that I felt othered. So I'm curious to know on Goal 5, when we go forward on Goal 5, and when you abbreviated it in the board packet, it said that making sure everyone in the community can join in. And that word everyone really struck out to me. And I want to make sure that when we go forward with this spirit of belonging, that we really mean everyone. And that means people who don't agree, people who don't like, people who have a dissenting opinion, people who change the temperature in the room when they walk in, that you just don't like them, that they too have a voice at the table. Because when they don't, they get othered. They get done the same thing you don't want done to others because they don't align with the club or the fraternal values that maybe diversity, equity, inclusion puts out. So I wanted just to put that out just as a feeling, just so for you to digest it, just on a recent experience. But the question I do have going out is this, on goal 2 about the aggregated, disaggregated data. We've been doing this about 10 years now, a little over 10 years. And I'm wondering what we know and where we're going forward. I heard a lot about what we've done and what's going on, but I really want to know where that ship's sailing. I want to know where we're going and what port we're aiming for. And I really want to get behind the work because I think it's valuable. I think people are valuable. And I think people's inclusivity in Lane County is at the most valuable. So I'd like to hear more about where we're going so I could support this work more fully. And I want to just offer my time and my background and my life experiences to help you get there. So thank you.
So when you say where we're going in terms of how we use data or our ultimate end goals?
Just our ultimate end goal. My more specific question might be this. If we're spending $1.2 million every year for this program on the average, where's that investment going to take us? What's our eventual return on the investment that we can look back and go, man, that was worth it. That was worth, in my mind, cutting 3 public safety jobs to make this happen. Because I have to answer that to my constituents. They ask me that all the time.
I think that's more of a Steve question.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where the 1.2 million comes from. That's
came from my question being asked on the budget statement and the data and the typing that I got back. It was 1.2 million.
Oh, that's the amount of employee time spent on equity work. It sounds like not necessarily positions that are dedicated to that work. So you're asking about how do we determine the end result of all of this investment?
Just, and this is maybe a question we can ask because we're obviously running short of time, but I'm basically looking in my head, like I said, my highest priority is public safety and the value that we're spending, even in actual real dollars, don't just discount this to employee time. There's real dollars we're spending here. Is this the most valuable work we can do when I compare it to putting more deputies on the street when we're already 72 deputies behind in this county? That concerns me.
Yeah,
and I think everything is under the umbrella of a discussion, including DEI work, including any other work that we do.
I think I'll answer the question this way, Commissioner. I certainly don't view this work as separate from all of it. What you had here was you had department heads from almost every department in the county talking about how this work is instrumental to the direct services that they're providing in the community. You had the sheriff here talking about recruitment and retention of female deputies as well as other things, and the list went on and on. The reason that we had all of our departments here today was to share with you just a small amount of the value and importance of this central equity work that we're doing and the goals that have been identified going forward in terms of specific investments and outcomes that we've already made in the program. So I would say yes. I think your question was, is this instrumental? Is this program and this work instrumental to delivering the level of quality that we need to the community? And I would say absolutely it is. It's not, and I'd say that in the context of, it's not that this work lives separate from that work. And I think that's the challenge when you talk about making reductions and things that are helping to support the direct service areas that you've articulated. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah. I think that's what we're trying to say here is that this work is central to, and it is a shift that we've seen in our equity work that over the years it has been sort of positioned previously as a separate program that supports, and what we really have moved to is this is not an isolated separate program. This is a part of everything that we do. That's why we talk about an equity lens, right? We need to understand how this work is important and critical to all the work we do, not sort of separate from.
Right, I think in addition to that, I mean, the door that I want to keep open in all of this work in general is I want to leave room for the difficult conversation and a chance to have the discussion in the first place, even if it's difficult. And I felt like I said, described my situation, that didn't have the opportunity to happen. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Well, thank you. In the interest of time, I will just, again, offer my great appreciation to everyone. I think it's really important that we remember that when you all come present to us, hours and hours of work have gone into preparing to present to us, in addition to the hours and hours of work that you do every day around this, and how complex it is to integrate so many different departments, schedules, and types of work, and cultures within departments, and cultures of programs within those. You really are exemplifying the work by how you presented the work to us today. So thank you, everyone, for doing that. There's always more I could say about this topic. I will just sort of, to get at what the administrator was saying about it, used to be more of a separate program, and as someone who was on the Equity and Access Advisory Board during that time, I really see a shift in how this work really is the container that holds everything we do, and it's a through line to it at the same time. So you really can't get rid of that container, and you can't pull that through line out and say this standalone thing is it's not a standalone thing. So it's sort of about, it becomes the identity of the organization, the way we're trying to honor the identity of all the different individuals that work here and that we serve. So thank you so much.
Chair.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I know we are running up against lunch hour, but this is really important topic. And I don't want to leave the conversation at the end with a commissioner accusing our staff of malfeasance. For me, I'm speaking, sir.
Someone else is speaking. Thank you.
That's unfair.
That is fair. It's a fair statement. You proposed what you proposed. And when people hear that and public comment comes forward supporting our equity work, that is important. It's an important statement. I think there is no place on our board for accusing staff of trying to frame another commissioner for statements and proposals that they made. If you want to make them, you make them. And if we want to have a conversation about that in the future, we should have a conversation about that in the future. But we can't end this conversation today with that being in the air. Our staff are doing their jobs, they're professionals, they're experienced, and I respect what they bring forward. And we need to honor that, and if you disagree, that's fine. But we can't have a place on our board, especially when we're talking about equity in our community, where at that very conversation, there's accusations against our staff. It's not acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I think we need to work on our working agreements a little bit better, and maybe we should reread this paper after lunch. Would that be okay? Because I think you had violated a couple of things that we agreed to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to appreciate Commissioner Buck for naming that, and that there's a bit of a time constraint, and to Vice Chair for bringing up our working agreements. And I think what I will wrap this item and this morning's session up with is this is actually an opportunity for us as a board to look at how we embody the values around equity and how we're not only supporting staff, but how we're exemplifying and living that. And one of the most important things I think about equity work, both internally and how we deliver our services and how the community views us and what they do or don't trust about us, ties directly to this issue of safety that we've had conversations about before, because psychological safety is an element of safety. There's physical safety and whether we're actually potentially at risk of bodily harm, but there's also such a thing as psychological safety. And equity work exists to try to provide that as much as possible. And I think that is really at the heart of the tension of the comments, of the experience of what happened at the Budget Committee meeting. So I completely agree, both with Commissioner Buck in standing with our staff and their professionalism, and also with Vice Chair, that we have some more work to do using the working agreements that this board worked so hard to develop. So we do still have an open assignment to work on that, and my commitment as your chair is to work with the administrator and vice chair to get some time on our agenda this summer to follow up on that, because we owe it to ourselves as colleagues and to this organization, the people that work here, and to the community that we serve. So, thank you all. With that, we do have county administration announcements. Can we do those in the afternoon? Okay, with that, we are adjourned until 1:30. We do have a time certain, so we'll see you all here in Harris Hall then.